watching us again online. It's day 2. Welcome back. I'm here again with my colleague, Francis Drouin, and we're excited on day 2 to be chatting with you again. There's a lot of exciting guests that are coming to our show. I don't know if you want to say something.
Bien sûr, il y a plusieurs. Aujourd'hui, c'est une journée incroyable et bienvenue à tous nos libéraux francophones. N'oubliez pas, encore une fois, Ariel et moi, on vous le rappelle souvent, quand vous avez des conversations sur Twitter pour que les libéraux se rassemblent, hashtag Lib2023. Et bien sûr, pour que les campagnes soient très, très bien financées, c'est très facile. Vous pouvez texter DONS, D-O-N-S au 54222. Aujourd'hui, Ariel, on a eu une très bonne conversation. Les libéraux se sont rencontrés dans des panels. Il y a eu la session politique ce matin. Comment tu as trouvé ça?
It was super great. I had an opportunity to chat with so many people on the floor. Lots of young liberals in the room, and they're so excited. And as my colleague just said, if you're watching us, you want to participate, make sure you're hashtagging Lib2023. And if you want to help us, you have to donate to 54222 or go to liberal.ca. So now we're getting ready to talk to some people and some guests, like as we did yesterday. And we're so excited to welcome Minister Stephen Guilbeault, who's going to be joining us to have a conversation about his day, how he's finding the convention. It's only day 2, and there's so much that has been done, and there's so much excitement, and so many more people to talk to.
Donc, évidemment, Ariel dit que c'est la deuxième journée. Nous avons un invité spécial qui sera avec nous dans quelques moments, juste avant que le premier ministre, l'ancien premier ministre, dois-je dire, le très honorable Jean Chrétien, va s'adresser à tous les libéraux dans cette salle. Et nous aurons la chance, avant, comme Ariel a dit, d'entendre de l'honorable Stephen Guilbeault, le ministre de l'Environnement. Ariel, je pense qu'il est en quelque part ici. On devrait l'appeler. Là. Hey, Stephen, comment ça va? Ça va bien?
How are you?
Good. How are you, Ariel?
Welcome. We're so excited to have you. How are you feeling?
You know what? It's my first in-person convention ever. So I
Wow.
came in 2019. We had a convention in 2021, which I did sitting in my living room, as did everyone else. So it's my first time being here in person with thousands of liberals from coast to coast to coast. Very excited.
I'm hearing so many young liberals talk about their choice to be part of this convention, to be part of our team, is due to the fact that we are making the right choices in terms of our climate change policies, our environmental policies. What do you have to say about that as the minister in charge of that?
Yeah, well, when we came in 2015, and as an environmental activist for 10 years, I saw the devastation that Harper did to our environment, to issues like renewable energy, public transit, electrification. Canada was basically a desert. We had to do everything. We have to rebuild everything. And we told people, give us a bit of time. We have a plan. We're putting a price on pollution. We're deploying thousands and thousands of electric buses across the country. We're investing tens of billions of dollars in electrification, in public transit. And we said, give us a bit of time and you'll see. Our plan is working.
Yeah.
Our plan will work. And now we have the data. In 2020 and in 2021, Canada was the best performing countries of all G7 countries when it comes to fighting climate pollution. Better than the US, better than France, better than Germany, better than Japan. We're doing it. Now, it's not enough. We need to do more, and we need to continue doing it. And when I look across the aisle when I'm sitting in the House of Commons and I see the Conservative Party and Pierre Poilievre saying that climate change doesn't even exist, when we have floodings in your region, in parts of Gatineau and Charlevoix, where we have forest fires, people being evacuated in Edmonton, where we have the parliamentary budget officer saying that in 2021, the cost to Canadians of climate change was $20 billion. That's 1 year.
Yeah.
So we need to do this. It's not, Canadians know that climate change is not an invention, unlike the Conservative Party and Pierre Poilievre, and that we need to do this, and we can do this while we grow our economy, while we create good jobs, while we invest in clean technologies, in battery technologies like Volkswagen in St. Thomas, like renewable energy. Alberta is phasing out coal 7 years earlier than what they had committed to do. So it's happening, but we need to continue doing it, and we need to ensure that Pierre Poilievre doesn't torpedo everything we've been working on over the past few years.
Absolument.
Thank you so much, Stephen Keeble, for coming on this panel. Évidemment, je veux m'assurer que nos collègues francophones du Québec et nos collègues francophones partout à travers le Canada comprennent très bien le message. Ariel et mon collègue Adam ont fait plusieurs interviews tantôt et vous aurez la chance de les voir après cette interview-là. Ils ont parlé à plusieurs jeunes partout à travers, des membres du Parti libéral qui sont jeunes, qui viennent de partout à travers le Canada. Et pour eux, la question des changements climatiques est tellement importante. Stephen, explique un peu ce qu'on a fait comme gouvernement au sein des changements climatiques, justement parce que les jeunes, c'est pour eux que ça va impacter ça. Et vous l'avez très bien dit, chez moi encore, j'ai des inondations en 2017, en 2019, en 2021, des inondations qui sont supposées d'arriver à chaque 100 ans. Et maintenant, c'est à chaque 3 ans pratiquement.
Alors, lorsque nous sommes arrivés en 2015 au pouvoir, après 10 ans d'années conservatrices, moi j'étais dans le mouvement environnemental, j'ai vu à quel point le gouvernement un peu a coupé dans l'efficacité énergétique, a coupé dans le financement du transport collectif, a coupé dans la protection de l'environnement et a même complètement détruit notre système d'évaluation environnementale. Alors, tout était à rebâtir, tout était à refaire et on a pris des engagements envers les Canadiens et les Canadiennes et on a dit, faites-nous confiance. On commence à mettre en place un plan. On a mis un prix sur la pollution qui est reconnu maintenant comme un modèle au niveau mondial en termes d'aider les gens à faire la transition puisqu'on retourne la majorité des revenus vers la population. Mais on a dit, donnez-nous un peu de temps et vous allez voir que notre plan fonctionne. Et là, cette année, on a eu, il y a quelques semaines, les résultats des inventaires des émissions de gaz à effet de serre. Et en 2020 et en 2021, le Canada a la meilleure performance en matière de lutte au changement climatique de tous les pays du G20. Mieux que les États-Unis, la France, l'Allemagne, le Japon. Nous sommes, au cours des 2 dernières années, nous avons eu la meilleure performance. Est-ce que ça veut dire que tout est réglé et que tout est beau? Bien sûr que non. Il reste encore beaucoup de choses à faire. C'est pourquoi on a besoin de vous. C'est pourquoi on a besoin de votre appui, de votre support pour pouvoir continuer à faire ce travail-là, pour pouvoir même accélérer la lutte au changement climatique afin de protéger notre environnement, bien sûr, mais l'avenir de nos enfants et de nos petits-enfants. J'en ai rencontré, moi, près de 200 jeunes libéraux qui sont ici de partout au pays et qui me disent, pour nous, la priorité, c'est l'environnement.
Absolument. Merci beaucoup, Ariel.
No, thank you so much, Minister. We really appreciate it. And earlier, you were on a panel that we're actually going to get to watch right now, which was the leading on climate change, climate action, and for clean air and strong economy. And we'll be watching that. Thank you so much for chatting with us today.
Thank you, Ariel.
Merci beaucoup.
I mean, Omar talked about the cost of climate change, and the Parliamentary Budget Officer published a study a little while ago that just in 2021, the cost of climate change in Canada was $20 billion. The Conservatives never talk about that. They don't want you to know that it's costing us a lot of money. There's some studies out there that say that by 2025, this cost is going to go up to $25 billion every year. That climate change is costing us. And, you know, shoving our head in the sands and pretending that climate change isn't real, like the Conservatives voted on at their last convention, is not a solution. Pretending that it's not going to happen in Canada, whereas it's happening everywhere else in the world, is not the solution.
And our government is putting a plan not only for light-duty vehicles, but for medium, heavy-duty vehicles. For the aviation sector, the budget talks about tax credits for sustainable aviation fuel. The marine sector, the budget announced over $100 million for green shipping corridors. So we have a comprehensive plan that will tackle climate change, but also is a promising, exciting, delivering economic plan that is creating jobs for Canadians today and tomorrow.
So just in the past few weeks, we announced a large purchase in Toronto of new electric buses. Those buses are being built in Winnipeg. And that's exactly the beauty of the work. Yeah, yay, Winnipeg. When we're talking about the economy and environment going hand in hand, when we're talking about the jobs that get created, that's exactly what we're seeing as those synergies being developed right across. And so for a while, Toronto, we had until last summer, I believe, we had the most electric buses out of any city in North America. It's an amazing thing, and that was with federal support.
So I think that but our role as a federal government is to provide as much incentive as possible for provinces to invest in non-emitting sources of energy, while at the same time ensuring that we're using our regulatory tools like fighting pollution, for example, to ensure that we can eliminate as fast as possible our reliance on fossil fuels.
You saw the President of the United States give an impassioned speech in the House of Commons about the role that Canada is going to play in the international economy. You heard the President of the EU Commission say the same thing just a few weeks before that. You're seeing the Prime Minister of Japan, the leaders of Germany come to Canada saying we need Canada's products and innovation. We are the only country in the G7 that has a free trade agreement with all G7 nations. We are so well positioned, not only to create an environment and an economy that is fantastic for Canadians, but the world wants what we're working on. The world wants our products, wants our food, wants our talent, and I'll tell you this. Of course, we're going through a challenging period. We've been going through it over the last 3 years. Unprecedented, extraordinary, once in a 100-year pandemic, and the impact that it's had on our economy, on our psychology, on our lives. And of course, people are frustrated. But people deserve a leader who acknowledges the challenges, but is optimistic about the future, about the promise that when we pull together, we're going to be in a better position than we are today.
Welcome back, and we're now going to be receiving a new guest who is the Minister for Senior and the MP from Brampton West, Minister Kamal Khera. Minister Kamal Khera is going to join us.
Je pense que ça va être très excitant et j'espère que vous avez profité de l'occasion de regarder la vidéo avec le panel sur l'environnement. Bien sûr, on a une très bonne collègue avec Mme Kamal Khera, qui est la ministre responsable des aînés, et je pense qu'on aura la chance d'avoir une discussion, et je pense qu'elle est juste là.
Hello, so good to see you.
Good to see you.
You look great.
Ça va?
Okay, we're so excited to have you join our Liberals who are watching live right now. Say hello to everyone you want to say hi to right now.
Hello, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. It's so good to be with Liberals here. The energy is great, but can I just say how nice it is to actually be with everyone and talk about what Liberals do best, progressive policies.
Amazing.
Alors, Mme Khera dit que c'est très plaisant d'être ici. Évidemment, on voit son énergie. Elle est contente d'être ici. Elle a jasé avec plein de libéraux partout à travers la convention qui viennent de partout à travers le Canada. Donc, Ariel va lui poser des questions, à savoir...
Yeah, so I was actually watching the panel that you were just on. It was amazing to listen to a lot of the good things that we've been doing for a number of years, and which are the reasons why we're now in a good position to be able to build more jobs in our country, to be able to see, people invest in Canada. Can you talk about that? Can you talk about how we've done inclusion with intentionality in a way where we're being recognized around the world for that?
Absolutely. Look, it was such a great panel earlier with our friends and colleagues, Randy and David Lametti, and of course Komal Minhas, who's kind of a big deal. I've got to know her.
Absolutely.
And we really had a really good conversation about diversity and inclusion and what that actually means.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, and I've been reflecting on this quite a lot recently, diversity is a fact. We all know that. But inclusion is a choice. And these are choices that we make as Liberals every single day. When we made a concerted, deliberate effort to ask her to run, the campaign we started back in 2014 to actually get more women into for us to run, I was one of them. When we made that concerted effort to make sure we have a gender-based analysis onto everything that we do, that we have a gendered parity in our cabinet. And what does that actually lead to? It leads to progressive policy.
Childcare.
Childcare. It leads to making sure that we have, GBA plus into our budgetary policies. It leads to making sure that our feminist international assistance policy that empowers women and girls, not just in Canada, but around the world, because it's a deliberate choice that we make as Liberals every single day. And it's so good to be here because our work is not done yet. And we see the deliberate choices that the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre make every single day. So just doubling down on our messaging and making sure that we talk to Canadians from coast to coast to coast, talks about what it means to be a Liberal, and making sure that we're making those choices and making sure inclusion is part of that.
Can I ask you a question? I mean, I already know the answer, but I'm only asking this question because it's important for our viewers. Why do you think it's so important to continue to contrast what the other side is doing right now?
Well, I think we see it very clearly. And, I've been in politics now for 7.5, 8 years, and I have never seen it so ugly when it comes to the other side. When you talk about Pierre Poilievre and Conservatives, they make a concerted choice to sit with the convoy that we saw, to give them donuts. They made a concerted choice to court towards, men that hate women with those hashtags. Yeah. They made a concerted effort to undermine our democracies by challenging the Bank of Canada, that want to actually, for our seniors, to giving them advice to invest in crypto. Those have real consequences for people, and I think the choice is clear for us. We need to double down on making sure the policies that we talk about, the work that we've done, have some of the lowest poverty rates in the country that we've ever seen, some of the highest employment rates that, we have more women working now than they ever did before. It's because we made a deliberate effort to make that forward. So we can't let anyone undermine that.
I'm going to translate some of this because there's a lot here. Évidemment, Mme Cara parle du fait que la diversité est un fait, mais l'inclusion, c'est un choix. Et bien sûr, notre premier ministre a même inspiré le président Joe Biden qui a nommé un cabinet avec un nombre égal de femmes et d'hommes dans son cabinet. Mais ça, c'est un choix. C'est un choix de démontrer que les femmes ont accès au pouvoir, ont accès aux décisions, au processus de décision. Ensuite, évidemment, une politique axée sur le féminisme dans le développement international. C'est quelque chose qui va frapper. Et Ariel, je sais que toi et moi, on collabore souvent sur des questions de l'Afrique et ça vient autonomiser les femmes partout à travers le monde entier. Mais ça, c'est un choix encore que le gouvernement Trudeau et que les ministres ont fait justement pour une politique de développement international axée sur le féminisme. Et ensuite, bien sûr, le contraste. On a parlé du contraste, l'importance du contraste. Pierre Poilievre n'est pas quelqu'un qui choisit d'appuyer la politique sur la petite enfance, n'est pas quelqu'un qui appuie d'appuyer les femmes justement dans le milieu du travail. Alors, Camarde, merci beaucoup d'avoir venu sur le plateau. On est très reconnaissant. Ariel?
Before you go, I just want to say I was chatting with somebody right after your panel. His name is Bruce. So Bruce, if you're watching or if you get to watch this, thank you so much for the many years of your service to our party, to this country. It means a lot. Bruce was talking about how impactful that conversation was and how excited he is to see the amount of inclusion that we're doing in our party, not just on including women, not just including people of color, but also including young people. What does that mean for you when we talk about healthcare as a registered nurse, as someone who is also a young woman of color? How do you feel that healthcare and that diversity works together?
Absolutely. I think, first, let me just say, I think I am so proud to be with this incredible team. When we come from, and I know Ariel, I remember when you got elected, how excited we were. Francis, I remember the very first time I actually had a conversation with him, he wanted to start a youth caucus, and he thought he was younger than me. And I had to shut that down real quick because I was the youngest member at the time who got elected back in 2015. And those voices matter. Those voices matter because they lead to better decision making. And when you talk about healthcare, I mean, particularly when you look at the healthcare workforce, these are people that are at the forefront of our healthcare system. When you talk about personal support workers who've taken care of elders in home care and in long-term care homes, most of them are racialized women. We made a commitment, by investing in our healthcare, close to $200 billion investing in our healthcare, making sure we're fulfilling our commitment to supporting those personal support workers by increasing their wages by $25 an hour. And we're really, really proud of that.
We are. Thank you so much.
Alors, Madame Kara parlait justement des jeunes en politique. Nous tous, je suis content de le dire, on a moins que 40 ans. Mais Kamal parlait aussi, et merci Kamal, du fait que même si vous étiez député, vous avez été travailler dans un hôpital. Kamal est une infirmière enregistrée. Elle a servi le public, non seulement comme députée, mais comme infirmière aussi pendant la COVID parce qu'il y avait un manque de main-d'œuvre. Merci beaucoup pour votre travail. J'en suis très reconnaissant.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Kamal. Now, before we go, we're just going to go to a clip package of Mark Miller. Today had the opportunity to chat with the incoming Indigenous People Commission chairs. We're going to watch that right now.
Okay, hi, I'm Mark Miller. I'm the Member of Parliament for Ville-Marie-Le Sud-Ouest Île des Sœurs, and I'm the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations. I'm here with the two new IPC Indigenous Peoples Commission's co-chair.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Jesse McCormick. I'm proud to be taking the role as Indigenous Peoples Commission co-chair.
Hi, and I'm Nadine Bernard. I'm the newly acclaimed Indigenous female co-chair coming from Mi'kma'ki in Nova Scotia.
We're at this convention that we haven't had in a couple of years. We've seen a really good turnout with people wanting to talk and wanting to hear about Indigenous issues. What are you excited about, and what do you want to hear and get out of this convention as the incoming IPC co-chair?
Well, I'm really honored to have this role, and I'm excited about the energy and the people in the room. We haven't been able to come together for a long time, so to get together and to be together with all of the Indigenous Peoples Commission, to join in discussions with ministers, with staff, with Liberals working in electoral district associations across the country to build a better country. It's an amazing sense of energy and focus and readiness that we're feeling here. And for everyone who couldn't make it, we wish you were here. You should have been in the room last night for the Prime Minister's speech and rally call. There's so much energy here, and it's a really positive time.
Well, you're truly right about that. This is probably our fourth convention that we've been able to attend over the years, and coming in, with my daughter and kind of growing with it and growing up with it, and hearing all the different issues over the years, but coming not only as a delegate, but as with someone with some responsibility now as the Indigenous female co-chair, and being present at the breakfast this morning and seeing a sold-out breakfast, and hearing from not only the Indigenous people, but from our allies as well, was really great to witness. One of the priorities and the great, I guess, experience between the two co-chairs now is we've both been candidates in provincial and federal politics. So knowing the barriers and, hearing all the concerns that are coming from our own communities, but, within our riding as well. So, and then the second thing is moving those policies, right? And having that voice at the table of reiterating the importance of having that Indigenous lens.
Well, there's 338 ridings across Canada, and we want to see more Indigenous people stepping up and taking advantage of the opportunity to secure the nominations, to participate, and ultimately to stand as candidates and get elected into the House of Commons, become part of Cabinet, and help to shape in a more powerful way the direction of this country, not only in relation to Indigenous peoples, but all the policy areas that fall within the federal scope.
And for those people that didn't have the opportunity to be here in person, there's a particular vibe at this convention that we haven't felt for years. Tell me a bit, Nadine, about what you felt about the speech last night from the Prime Minister and the energy in that room, because I think it was pretty special and it's something we haven't seen in a long while.
It's nice to see that it's kind of an elevated excitement for what we hope to see in this next phase, and knowing that as a collective that we all are re-energized to want to move some of these issues forward. So no, it was exciting, and the vibe that you get from here is a vibe that you still feel today, and a vibe I hope that I continue to feel when I go home.
The Prime Minister's looking pretty feisty. He's ready. He's got fire in his belly. He's bringing the fight to the field, and there was a lot of people that were really excited to see that last night.
And I think a lot of people would echo that. And this is a day, May 5th, where we commemorate missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. I wear the red dress as it is Red Dress Day, really to take a moment and to think about some people in the society that are very vulnerable, and despite the fact that this government has made some clear advances in accountability and investments to making sure that those people who are the most vulnerable in Canada do get some support and we're able to put an end to that tragedy, it is still ongoing, and this is also a a day for us to reflect.
And, understanding that where we're at today at a liberal convention, and politics is definitely, and democracy is definitely a part of our conversation, but there's some great significance about today. And, just seeing the red pin on your lapel right now, and the importance around Red Dress Day. And the sacrifice that, and the intergenerational harms that happen in regards to policies, in regards to a lack of social services and infrastructure within our communities. So those are the things that, I've learned and I've witnessed and I've heard and wanting to advocate for. So I wanted to put some consideration and some respect into that as an Indigenous woman, as a mother, as a grandmother, as a daughter. I think that's a really important topic to talk about. So
you're wearing the moose hide, which is really a symbol of the men's role in ending violence towards women and girls, and pioneered by the Lacerte family out in your neck of the woods. Talk to us a little about that.
Well, this is a symbol of the role that men play, and Indigenous men specifically, in helping to support Indigenous women in the challenging work of overcoming the many vulnerabilities that have led to missing, murdered, and Indigenous women and girls. And I, for one, the strongest people I know, the strongest people in my life are Indigenous women. And we need to work with passion, with energy, with cooperation and collaboration to ensure that we're lifting the shackles of poverty, of trauma, of negative experiences, because there's so much strength and potential. If we can take those burdens away, Indigenous women will lead us to so many good things.
Look, thanks so much for doing this. I don't know if you have any final thoughts for our listeners or our viewers, but I'll give you the mic, Nadine.
Leaving with the last words, eh? No, you know what? Even talking about elections, right? Like there's success in the wins and the losses, right? And the importance of lessons that are learned and fighting the good fight, right? So knocking on those doors, having those conversations is really important, and hence why we're here today. We're continuing that conversation and continuing that good fight. So, and hoping for that win, right? But in some of our losses too, we have some really good lessons to move forward with and be able to be better people moving forward.
Welcome back, everyone. As you can see, the room is getting full again. The excitement is real as we're waiting to chat with some special guests in the room. And right now, we're actually joined with a very special guest, one of my favorite people in the entire world, Marcy Ian, Minister for Women, Equality and Gender and Youth. Welcome, Marcy.
Oh my gosh, hugs.
Oh, mwah.
I've been watching on the sidelines. You're doing so well.
Okay, Marcy
Look
said
at
it.
Ariel Kayabaga. Look at this.
The legend said it, so it's true. How are you? How are you feeling?
I'm doing well. You know what? I've met a lot of people who've said, this is my first convention.
This
and
is
I've been,
your
and I've
first
been saying,
convention.
this is kind of my first real convention because we're together.
Yeah.
Everything was virtual.
Yeah.
In 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is amazing. The energy, the panels, the excitement, what's coming up later. This is pretty amazing.
I have to ask, because I'm sure you probably get this question a lot. You were the one doing the interviews before, and now you get interviewed all the time. How does that feel for you?
It depends who's interviewing. I feel right now that I'm in very good hands.
Yes!
Sometimes, there are times where I think, that's not a question that I would have asked that way. I almost want to correct the question sometimes. But I also appreciate what it's like to be on that side, and so how important it is to give a fulsome answer and to actually answer the questions being asked.
Absolutely. Marcy, there's a lot of young people here today. And this is a file that is important to you. I know this because I've seen the impact you have on a lot of youth. I've had you in my riding of London West, and let me tell you, Marcy made everybody cry. It's like everybody was just sobbing. Talk to us about, your role around making sure that diverse youth are included in our policies. LGBTQI, S2, are also included. Tell us the work that you're doing and how can you go get the ones that have not joined us yet?
Mm-hmm. So first and foremost, it means something that we're standing here. Can we just take a moment and say that? It means something that young people can see that this is possible. They see it in you. You were in municipal politics before you started. You trailblazed in that spectrum, and then you came and you ran federally and you won. There are young people that are looking at you, Ariel, and I tell you this all the time, and understand that things are possible because of the road that you have blazed and continue to blaze. So first and foremost, it's important to see that things are possible. When it comes to the policy, it's about listening to young people, understanding that they're not just leaders tomorrow or leaders of the future, but they have a lot to say, and they are saying it loudly and clearly right now, and we need to be listening. So whether that is about 2S LGBTQI plus young people, whether it's about racialized young people, Black, young people with disabilities, Indigenous young people, we need to understand what they're talking about. They're talking about inclusivity on every level. They're talking about being heard. They're talking about environment. They're talking about housing. They're talking about how the jobs that they want, whether or not they'll be available by the time they graduate university. They're talking about safety. They're talking about a lot of things, and we can learn a lot. And here's what's amazing. Because I get to sit at a table and take those stories that I hear across this country and take those experiences back to that table and say, this is what I'm hearing. And then work with an amazing group of people, because we work across our portfolios and cabinet to say, this is what we need to do. Or what about this? Because I heard this in Sarnia, Ontario, or I heard this in Nunavut, and here's what this group is doing. Maybe we incorporate that. That means something.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, diversity is a fact.
Yes.
I mean, look at us.
Yes, we are diverse.
Look at this country.
Yes.
Look at the people that are in this room today.
Absolutely.
It's a fact. But
Absolutely.
inclusivity is a choice.
That is right.
Talk about that. And you were on a panel earlier talking about, you know, diversity, inclusion, anti-racism in our country. Tell us how we help people make a choice. Because everybody has a choice to make.
Yes. And that's a huge question. I've got to back up and talk about why I ran in the first place.
Yeah.
And that was George Floyd being killed almost 3 years ago.
Absolutely.
And just thinking, I want to serve differently. And I was thinking that because I was sitting on a talk show on a panel, and a lot of the press at that time was reporting on the issues in the States. Look at what happened to George Floyd. Look at what's happening in the States. And we weren't talking about what was happening in our country. But what was happening in our country was not the greatest. And that inclusion part is not something we always see. And so I've always been taught, my parents have always said, if you want to be, or you want to see a solution, you need to be part of it.
Yes.
So I put my money where my mouth was and I ran. So that inclusion part is really important, because that's where people make choices. That's where they decide whether they want to just be diverse, whether it's the company they run, or it's the government, or it's schools, wherever it is, or whether they really want to lead with empathy and be truly inclusive. And we are stronger when we are fully inclusive, because that diversity of voices is what we need.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's what we need.
Marcy, I know that a lot of young women, for me, it's an honor to know that you're someone that I looked up to. And Jean Augustin as well, of course. And then now I get to work with you. And it means a lot when you can see that representation and be able to be it. A lot of young women who are watching right now see themselves in us. What message do you want to send for them right now?
It's not easy. It's not an easy road. And that's the first thing that needs to be said. This is not for the faint of heart. It takes courage, because we're walking in spaces where we don't see ourselves. We have each other. We have allies, but we don't see ourselves on the walls where we work. We don't see ourselves in a lot of the spaces, but it takes courage. And for me, Ariel, it's about the work we do right now, but it is about who's next.
Yes.
And so the message is, do it. If you have an inkling, if you want to make change, and that is younger women, that is women who are a certain age, changing careers,
Absolutely.
who might be 50 like I was
and who
at
are
the
doing
time,
great
right?
things.
And just all of that. We need all of that diversity, but do it, or at least reach out.
Absolutely.
Reach out and ask us.
Yeah.
We're here. We're here to mentor. We're here to support.
Absolutely.
Because we need you. We've got 103 of us. We need a lot more in Parliament.
Oh, thank you so much, Marcy, for chatting. This is so great. Now we're going to go to the package on the panel that Marcy was on, which was fighting racism, hate, and building a Canada for everyone. Back to you.
In Vancouver alone, anti-Asian racism increased by 700-fold within a short period of time, and it hasn't dissipated. I would talk to people who were just so terrified to go out to do the very basic things, because in their country, they were told, go back, go home. Well, where's home when you were born here? Where's home when you've created your life and your family here in Canada? Home is Canada.
For me, it's really refreshing to have a party in government that not only keeps delivering on what we promised to minorities across the country, but actually goes beyond that and keeps adjusting and doing better and moving the targets to make them even more ambitious after engaging these communities. And so I felt very, very comfortable, not just in the party itself in terms of the policies, but in the membership, in caucus. I mean, it is exactly what people refer to when they say that, you know, the more diverse an institution is, the more richer the conversations are.
There was a ship called the St. Louis that originally had people that had visas for Cuba. And the Cuban government decided to deny the visas. And so that ship with 1,000 Jews or more came up the coast and went to the United States, and the United States denied them entry. And then their only hope before being sent back to Europe was Canada. And yet our Liberal government at the time under Mackenzie King denied them the right to enter as well. And they all got sent back to Nazi Europe. And I said in the House of Commons that day, I really pray that one day our Prime Minister gets up in the House of Commons and apologizes to the Jewish community and those who died in the Holocaust for Canada's refusal to accept Jewish refugees. And yet, a year later, our Prime Minister got up in the House of Commons and he did exactly that.
This party understands what it means to call out anti-Black racism. We have a Prime Minister who named it, and not just named it, but this party lives it. It is the reason that I'm here.
It's our lived experiences and our ability to talk to people and to bring those lived experiences of real inclusion by Canadians into the work that we do today. What we get to do today is probably the answer to why I ran. It really is about, you've got to see her to be her, and I think you're seeing hims and hers on this stage, and with all of you, and this is about building the kind of Canada that I certainly want to be a part of for Canada's young people and the future of this country.
So here's the thing about that action plan. It's about empowering communities. It's about what's working, what's not working, and it's about empowerment, because long after we're gone, the communities have to stand. And so when capacity is given to grassroots organizations, and that's why it's grassroots, they're able to grow. They're able to stand no matter who is in power at any time. The second part is that we, as a government, work across our portfolios. This isn't just about women and gender equality and youth. This is about public safety. It's about diversity, inclusion, housing. It's about small business and on the international scale. It's about justice. We work together on all of these issues.
Hey,
welcome back to Liberal Live. It's been an action-packed afternoon here at the Shaw Centre. I hope everybody tuning in has had a great time. I hope you're getting lots of great information and tons of insight from all the really, really incredible panels. Maintenant, c'est mon grand plaisir de présenter mon ami, mon collègue et le ministre de Santé, le député de Québec, Jean-Yves Duclos. Bonjour, monsieur, ça va?
Bonjour tout le monde.
How's your day been?
It's wonderful. There's so much great company here that it's very hard to be bored. No, it's exciting. Lots of people have so many things to say, so it's also great to be in your company, Adam.
Nice to be with you too. So health has been top of mind for so many Canadians over the last couple of years. We've got a great opportunity ahead of us to improve our healthcare system, and we've got an opportunity in a few minutes to see your panel, to hear a little bit from all of the incredible insights. We're very lucky to have quite a few medical doctors in caucus with us. How is it working with amazing people like Brendan Hanley and Dr. Bennett?
Well, amazing is the right word. No, we've had an amazing panel because there were amazing people on the stage, but also amazing people listening to us. I went to see them after. We were engaged on how and why and how we can be proud of our healthcare system, our public healthcare system, which delivers more benefits than more expensive systems outside of Canada. But our healthcare system has challenges. Our health workers have been severely impacted by COVID-19. They need to be supported so they can look after loads of patients who depend on them.
Merci. So, en français ou anglais, Canadians deserve to have healthcare that is timely, that is universal and totally available to all of their needs. And we recognize that there have been some challenges. And we've got that plan. On February 7th, we unveiled an almost $200 billion plan to make sure that Canadians didn't have to wait to see a specialist, to make sure they can get the procedure or the surgery they need on time, to make sure that every Canadian has access to a family doctor. Could you elaborate a little bit on what we're doing to ensure that Canadians are getting the service they need and deserve?
Tout à fait. Le 7 février dernier, j'étais présent lorsque le premier ministre Trudeau a présenté tout à fait ça, le plan de 200 milliards de dollars additionnels aux transferts que l'on ferait de toute manière. Pour les milliards, c'est important, mais pour surtout accroître l'accès à la médecine familiale au pays. On sait qu'il y a trop de gens qui n'ont pas accès à un médecin de famille ou à une équipe de médecine familiale, qui attendent trop longtemps parce qu'ils ne savent pas où aller avant de pouvoir se faire traiter pour des maladies qui se traitent facilement au départ, mais qui deviennent plus compliquées et plus coûteuses à traiter lorsqu'on attend trop longtemps, pour investir dans les travailleurs, les infirmières, les médecins assistants, les pharmaciens, les paramédics, parce qu'ils ont besoin de notre appui pour qu'on puisse les retenir, en engager davantage et reconnaître les compétences de ceux et celles qui sont formés à l'étranger, mais aussi pour investir dans la santé mentale, un élément de la santé globale qui est tellement important qu'on a tendance malheureusement à avoir trop oublié au cours des dernières années, pour les jeunes Canadiens en particulier qui vivent des moments difficiles. Et finalement, investir dans un système de données moderne. Au Canada, on perd trop de temps et on perd trop d'argent parce qu'on ne fait pas circuler suffisamment l'information entre les différents professionnels de la santé. Donc un agenda solide, beaucoup d'argent, mais plus important encore, ce sont des résultats, comme tu le disais très bien, importants pour les travailleurs et pour les patients.
Merci, Monsieur le ministre. Et c'est un grand plaisir d'être ici avec vous tous et toutes aujourd'hui. Now, we've gone on a lot about healthcare. We haven't even really touched on dental, so that'll have to wait for another time because it's my pleasure now to introduce a panel that you were just on, and that's Strengthening Canada's Universal Public Healthcare System. I want to thank you for everything that you do every day, and thank you for being here on Liberal Live with me.
Merci, Adam, et merci à tous ceux qui nous regardent. We want to be, and we are right to be proud of our publicly funded healthcare system in Canada. But like most other things, we should not take that for granted. No, we should always be mindful that there are other forces and other political forces in Canada that would like to take us elsewhere, that would like to undermine in all sorts of ways the public healthcare system, a strong public healthcare system of which we can again be very proud.
Mais premièrement, je pense qu'on parle aux Canadiens jour après jour, comme que Jean-Yves l'a si bien dit, les Canadiens sont très fiers de leur système de soins de santé. Et puis, on veut s'assurer qu'il ne va jamais avoir un système à deux vitesses. Puis, je pense que c'est réellement ça qui est la beauté du système canadien. La seule carte qu'on a besoin pour nos systèmes de santé, c'est pas notre carte de crédit, mais plutôt notre carte de santé. Puis on doit s'assurer que ça va continuer.
You know, having been Chief Medical Officer of Health through the pandemic, from the Yukon perspective, I saw how these kind of progressive policies, the fact that the federal government was there for Canadians through the pandemic, and all of the progressive policy, I would say those were the things that convinced me that I could jump into the ring and be a part of this party.
Currently, we have, as Sonia said, almost 300,000 children under the age of 12 that are now receiving that dental care, and therefore lots of future costs and bad consequences that will be avoided.
One thing that I wanted to add when we talk about the CHA, I mean, it's all about equity. It's about equity for Canadians. And we talk about diagnostic services, but let's not forget it's not just about diagnostic services that we've had to kind of tell them to pay back. Chez nous, dans la province du Nouveau-Brunswick, pour toute la question d'accès aux services d'avortement, nous avons 2 hôpitaux dans toute notre province qui offrent les services. Et puis, nous avions une clinique qui était privée, la clinique 554. Et puis, finalement, le gouvernement conservateur du jour a refusé de rembourser les gens ou de payer pour ces services. Ça fait que récemment aussi, notre gouvernement a dit à la province du Nouveau-Brunswick qu'il devait nous rembourser pour ces services-là. So when we talk about reproductive health rights in this country, we certainly can't take it for granted. Reproductive health rights or services are health services, and the federal government must continue to make sure that we're a watchdog to make sure that these services will always be accessible to women within this country.
I really echo your thoughts on the team. And our government is providing funds to increase the salaries of personal support workers. I think this is one of the most important areas. Having had personal experience as my husband, who passed away in 2021, the personal support workers were so vital to his end of life. And the fact that they couldn't even, in their scope of practice as prescribed in Ontario, even give him a painkiller. In other words, the whole idea of expanding each of the team's scope of practice is something that we were moving towards in Ontario. And in terms of physicians, the Canadian Medical Association is very keen to ensure pan-Canadian licensure. So a physician licensed in Ontario can practice without any difficulty or any further exams or anything else in another province.
We secured an agreement with provinces and territories which does transfer an additional $200 billion over 10 years in support to provinces and territories, but equally and perhaps even more importantly, comes with transparency, accountability. Where is that money going to be used for in terms of increasing access to family medicine, in particular in rural and remote areas where access to family health teams is difficult? How is it going to increase mental health services and substance use services, in particular for younger Canadians that are struggling? How do we use those dollars to retain more of the healthcare workers by supporting them? How do we train more of them? How do we recognize the credentials of those trained nationally and internationally more quickly and more efficiently? And finally, how do we use data better to support the efforts of provinces and territories in connecting patients to their records, connecting workers together, pharmacists, paramedics, nurses, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, lab technicians, obviously many others that need to work better together in a better team environment to support the need of patients. So lots of great work done, but much more needs to be done because, as we know, the challenges are there and the other forces are there too.
Okay, welcome back everyone. We are still live in this room. It's getting busy and busier and louder, so much excitement. And we're here with, I'm here with my colleague Adam Vancouverden. I haven't chatted with you today, but, and now we're here with Kamal Manhez. You were on a panel earlier talking about inclusion, equity, talking about women, and talking about the things that the Liberal Party is doing to make life better for all Canadians. Tell us, like, you're not a politician. Like, what brought you here today to talk about that? And what makes you feel so excited to be part of this convention today?
Absolutely. I am a lifelong liberal. I grew up in Grand Prairie, Alberta, and in the heart of conservative country, but my family has always been staunch liberals because of the Multiculturalism Act. And so when you grow up in that environment, when you see the power of opportunity of liberal progressive values, you can't help but grow up in a way that you want to continue to progress these values. So part of the reason that I'm here is because I love being a liberal, because these values are so important, especially now more than ever when they're coming under attack, and we have to keep protecting what it means to be Canadian. And that panel was such a powerful way of doing that. We talked so many different topics, from seniors to end-of-life care, ending or being able to choose to end your life with dignity, to live with dignity, from Indigenous reconciliation to women in cabinet, gender equal cabinet, women on the bench. We were able to cover so many topics that the Liberals helped turn into legislation. It was a deeply, I'm so proud to have been part of that conversation and to be here today.
So you talked earlier about our campaign of Invite Her, and you're such a great speaker. What would be your response if we invited you to run?
On the spot.
Oh my goodness. You know, for the right opportunity, I would absolutely consider it. I'm loving building my business right now. I'm a small business owner like so many Canadians are, but if the right opportunity came up, I would absolutely consider it. I love doing work for Canadians and with Canadians, and that would be an incredible, incredible invitation and opportunity.
So come on, I didn't know you were from Alberta. I think that's great. Every time I go to Alberta, I meet so many Liberals. And that's the thing, you know, it shouldn't shock people to realize that our movement stretches from coast to coast to coast, and there's people enthusiastic about our party and our policies, you know, in every city and town across Canada. Yes. And so that's great to hear. One thing that really resonated with all the speakers, but particularly your part of the panel, was positivity, optimism, collaboration, and a desire for a better country. You know, that notion that better is always possible. I'm always striving to learn how to be a better male ally in the context of feminism and working in this environment as a member of our government, but also just being a representative of my riding of Milton, standing up for what's important, making sure that females in my riding feel like they've got a strong voice in Parliament. You know, any advice for men out there that want to be better male allies?
It would be to listen. So much of that, Randy said that earlier as well, that when we listen to people from any identity that is different than ours, when we really take time to build empathy, understanding, and then from there go into problem solving and solutioning together, we can really change the social fabric of the things that are holding certain subsets of society back. So whether it's women, whether it's LGBTQIA folks, whether it's Indigenous folks, we all have to come to the table to proactively create new policy, new changes, and listen. That active listening, it's so hard, but it's so important. And building that muscle of empathy is so critical, because at the end of the day, every legislation, every piece of policy is about a person and an individual story.
100%. I love it. Thank you so much for contributing. Thank you for coming on Liberal Live. Thank you for being an awesome panel.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. How great it is to be here. How great it is to be together. It is certainly one of the, and I've been at a lot of conventions, I can assure you, and this is one of the best. And it's so great to celebrate together, to make sure that we face the challenges of the country and the party, and to make sure that we are successful. We accomplished a lot together since 2015, but we are facing an opposition who wants to undo all of that. So thank you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for your dedication to your country. And thank you for helping us with the challenges that we have ahead. Now I have a great privilege here tonight. I'm in fact introducing the two young lads from Shawinigan. The Right Honourable Jean Chrétien was first elected as a Member of Parliament in 1963, a whole 25 years before I was elected, for people that are keeping track back home. Throughout his early political career, he served as Minister of National Revenue, President of the Treasury Board, Minister of Finance, and the first Minister of Finance, the first French Canadian to be the Minister of Finance, and he certainly knew how to do it. I would say not bad for a lad from Shawinigan. After a brief break from politics, he was elected as leader of the Liberal Party of Canada in 1990, becoming leader of the opposition, but most importantly, he became my boss. And that was no easy task then, and it certainly is not today. I remember the first time he asked me, "Why are you supporting me?" Well, I said, basically, if you become the leader, you will win the election. And if you become the leader, I'll win the election. In 1993, under his leadership, as I told him, we won the election and formed the government, and he served as Prime Minister of Canada to 2003. In 1995, he was successful in helping keep Quebec as part of Canada in the second referendum. And I can tell you, friends, I was there. I was there during that referendum. And I can tell you there was pressure beyond pressure. That was quite a night. I remember my wife, Frances, who was here. She was taking a course in Charlottetown. And every night when she went home, late in the night, all the lights were out in the farming community between Charlottetown and Majel. The night of that referendum, every home was lit up, right from Charlottetown to Majel, and I would say right across this nation, from Newfoundland to Vancouver Island and right to the north, because they knew how important it was. And I can tell you, the man I'm introducing was a big part of that. And also, despite the pressure from our closest allies, Prime Minister Chrétien made a decision not to join the conflict in Iraq. And I remember that. Now, my note says with the benefit of hindsight, but Chrétien had foresight. And that's what you have to be a great Prime Minister. And of course, it certainly proved to be the right decision. But to sum it up, what this man was so great, and I'm so proud to call him a friend. And I think more important, he calls me a friend. And that is pretty important. I always say he decided we were going to be friends. I should note that he served in Parliament as a member of Parliament, and we're just talking about that out back. 35 years, 10 months, and 25 days. As of today, I've been a member of Parliament for Cardigan for 34 years, 5 months, and 14 days. So I got a piece to go yet. And as we work together at the front of today, as we look at the issues that confront us today, it's so great to have a man with such wisdom as Prime Minister Jean Chrétien. And as he speaks tonight, we should listen carefully. We will be the better for it. Now, for the man that's asking the questions, François-Philippe Champagne. As I said, Shawinigan took over. He was first elected in 2015, and he served as Minister of International Trade, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and currently serves as Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry. But I think the most important thing about François-Philippe Champagne, he's responsible for the Volkswagen plant in Ontario. He's responsible for the electric tire plant in Nova Scotia. He's important for the BioVector plant in Prince Edward Island. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what's in the water in Shawinigan, but between Mr. Chrétien and François-Philippe Champagne, that part of the country has produced two of the best politicians that I ever met. So, without any further ado, it is my honor to welcome the boys from Shawinigan.
Jean Chrétien doesn't walk down a street, he tears through it. Accompanied by local candidate Eric Cunningham, he kept an entire entourage scrambling to keep up with him. At one point, he even blitzed a slow-moving bus that was going down the road.
Jean Chrétien, 2,652.
The Prime Minister has put us for too long in a pressure cooker. Now is the time to turn off the stove and fire the cook.
Les Canadiens et les Canadiennes ont décidé, le temps est venu de travailler ensemble pour remettre le pays sur la bonne voie.
J'exécuterai loyalement et fidèlement les pouvoirs et je m'acquitterai des responsabilités qui m'ont été confiées en qualité de Premier ministre.
We will do what is needed so that Canada will move in the 21st century, united from sea to sea, proud of its two official languages.
Les Québécois et Québécoises ont réaffirmé la valeur de tout ce que nous avons bâti ensemble.
If military action proceeds without a new resolution of the Security Council, Canada will not participate. Je pense que la façon dont nous réussissons à régler nos problèmes donne un exemple au monde qu'il est possible d'être voisin, d'être indépendant et de travailler en très bonne collaboration l'un avec l'autre.
I am strong for the rights of citizens and the protection of the minority. It's what made Canada such an exceptional country.
It's true that I speak on one side of my mouth. I'm not a Tory, I don't speak on both sides of my mouth.
And you have to eat like a lot more salad than you used to?
Yeah.
How do you like that?
Not much.
Moi, je vais pas le dire en anglais ici, en français au Québec. Je vais vous le répéter ici en français aussi.
There is no greater satisfaction to have the privilege to make a contribution as a member of Parliament, as a minister, and eventually for me as Prime Minister, to make this country the best country of the world.
Vive le Canada! Merci beaucoup!
Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup.
Madame la Présidente, Madame et Messieurs les ministres, Mesdames et Messieurs les députés, délégués libéraux, mes chers amis, it's something to be back. And to be introduced by my good friend, Lawrence. You know, when I became Prime Minister, the first cabinet meeting, Lawrence was there. After the meeting, he called Frances, his wife, and he said, "Darling, I will be back on the farm in 4 years." Because Chrétien said, "I will make what has to be done with the finance of the country." And, you know, it has to be done. I might be Prime Minister only one term, but I will do it. So Lawrence felt he was not to be re-elected. He was a bit mistaken. He was re-elected 9 times after that. But he was very useful in the cabinet. When the people will start with big theories, I will say, I'd like to know what Mr. Macaulay thinks of it. And everybody will come down on the ground with 2 feet, right on the ground, stop dreaming. So thank you, Lawrence, for your presentation. I understand that Hillary Clinton will come later on. You know, for 8 years, Bill was the president and I was the prime minister. And we met many, many times. She became a very good friend of Aline. And one day she played a kind of a trick. There was the Summit of the Americas. And Hillary had put the name of Aline as a speaker. And Aline was not aware. So they insisted. I said, no, I'm not making speeches. The stage is for Jean, it's not for me. So they insisted. They prepared a little speech in English and in French to talk to all the delegates for the Summit of the Americas and the spouses who were there. So Aline was not very happy, moved in her room, and came down, moved to the podium, and spoke to the delegates in Spanish only. And nobody knew in the Canadian delegation that she was speaking Spanish. So Hillary was a very good, they were very good friends, and I had many occasions to discuss with her, but I'm very preoccupied to see her in Ottawa today. The Globe and Mail will get crazy. She is an American, melding in Canadian politics. We need a royal commission. My friend lawyers in Ottawa like the Globe and Mail because if we have all the commissions that they want us to have, they will all become very rich. Me too, I intervene at times in politics elsewhere. One day I was in the Philippines and I like very much Ramos, and I said he should be reelected. Oh my God. But I survived. And another occasion, during the election of 2015, I was in Washington, and they asked me, what do you think? Madam Clinton is sick. She has to stop her campaign. She had some pneumonia. Oh, I said, don't worry, you know, they have medication for pneumonia, but they don't have medication for stupidity. No, it was not meddling. I didn't name anybody. So, ladies and gentlemen, they say that politicians, even retired politicians like me, should not fill their speeches with statistics and numbers. But tonight, I want to talk to you about three numbers, three big round numbers, 30, 60, and 90. 30, because this year, in October, will mark 30 years since the 1993 election, when the people of Canada elected the first three Liberal majority governments that I had the honor to lead as Prime Minister. 60, because last month was the 60th anniversary of my first election to Parliament that occurred on the 8th of April, 1963. '90, because it is my 90th years. I will turn 90 in 8 months. I intend to celebrate all year long. But relax. You will be able to invite me when I will be 100. People say I am an optimist, and I am. I think it is the secret to a long and happy life. But I have reason to be optimistic. I look at Canada. I look at how far we have traveled. Look at what we have accomplished together. That is why I am an optimist and I'm also a realist. Il y a 60 ans, accompagné de mon père, un machiniste dans un moulin de papier, et avec Aline, mon roc de Gibraltar, nous avons marché sous la tour de la paix, alors que je venais me faire assermenter comme nouveau député. J'avais 29 ans, j'étais un jeune avocat unilingue du Québec rural. Je ne m'étais jamais rendu plus loin au Canada que la rivière des Outaouais. Ce fut un des grands moments de ma vie. Et tout ça était dû aux citoyens de la région de Shawinigan qui m'ont fait confiance pendant 40 ans. Je n'oublierai jamais cette incroyable loyauté de leur part. Et je dois aussi remercier les gens de Beau Séjour parce que je me suis trouvé sans siège à un moment donné à cause j'avais démissionné et ils m'ont reçu en vrais Acadiens, ça veut dire extrêmement chaleureusement, comme leur député de Beau Séjour. Et j'ai eu vraiment un très beau séjour dans Beau Séjour. Le Canada de 1963 était tout à fait différent du Canada d'aujourd'hui. Il n'y avait pas de système national de santé. Si la maladie frappait fort une famille, elle pouvait tout perdre, y compris la maison familiale. Nous n'avions pas 2 langues officielles, nous n'avions pas de charte des droits et des libertés. Notre Constitution était une loi britannique. Nous n'avions même pas un drapeau national, qui est notre unifolié aujourd'hui. Et je profite de l'occasion pour saluer le nouveau roi Charles, qui est couronné cette fin de semaine. Je l'ai connu en 1970, alors que la reine, le prince Philippe, la princesse Anne et lui-même, le roi d'aujourd'hui, sont venus célébrer le centenaire des territoires du Nord-Ouest. Et pendant 4 jours, Aline, ma fille France et moi avons été les hôtes de la famille royale dans le Grand Nord canadien. Et ce fut le début d'une amitié de 53 ans avec la famille royale. Et aujourd'hui, la reine a eu la bonté de me donner l'ordre du mérite et je l'ai énormément apprécié. Et je souhaite au nouveau roi la meilleure des chances et beaucoup de succès dans ses lourdes tâches. My friends, talk about these things that happen, and they did not happen by accident. They did not fall from the sky. They happened because liberal governments made them happen. I know because I was there. I'm extremely proud to have served under 2 of the greatest prime ministers in Canadian history, Mike Pearson and Pierre Elliott Trudeau. Canada was never perfect. No country ever was. But we did not look back. We look ahead, and move Canada forward. We made it more just. We made it more prosperous, more caring, more tolerant, and more diverse. That is what Liberals do best. They see the future, and they rally Canadians together to build that future. I was there for the Medicare, for the flag, for the Canadian pension plan, for the 2 official languages, for the patriation of the Constitution, for the Charter of Rights, for the abolition of capital punishment, for the permission of divorce in Canada. You know, I was there because, you know, it was Canada at its best that I lived during all these years. So, I'm mixed up on my page here, I guess. I get off of the damn text once in a while, and so, you know, we did all that. It was a kind of future that was built under Mike Pearson and Pierre Trudeau. And then 30 years ago, the people of Canada turned to us again. Many of you in this room were not even born, but ask your parents. Ask anyone who was there. The Canada of 1993 was in desperate shape. We were in the worst economic crisis in half a century. We were broke. 35 cents of every tax dollar went to pay the interest on the debt, not the capital, the interest of the debt. It was robbing us of the future, your future. The International Monetary Fund was knocking at the door. The Wall Street Journal was saying we were a candidate to become a third world nation. And even worse, we were going through the worst national unity crisis in our history. The support for separatism in Quebec was at all-time high. And people across the country had given up hope. As hard it is to believe in 2023, 30 years ago, millions of Canadians were giving up on Canada. In this hour of crisis, the Canadian people turn again to the Liberal Party, and to me as leader to rebuild their hope and their trust. And that is what we did. We turned the economy around. We restored the confidence of the Canadian people. And I did not do it alone. I had a great caucus. I had fantastic ministers, and we had a super team working together. But we did it the Canadian way. We did it the Canadian way, in a liberal way, with a big heart. After we had cleaned up the big economic mess, we invested in people. We increased, for example, the EI parental leave to 1 year. We created the National Child Benefit. We made the biggest investment in post-secondary education in Canadian history, with the Millennium Scholarships, the Research Chair, and the Canadian Graduate Scholarship and others. We made Canada the place to be for the best and the brightest. We reversed the brain drain and turned it into a brain gain. Yes, we had a big heart, but we could also be tough. Because to govern effectively and fairly, you have sometimes to be tough. And, you know, I don't mind being tough when I had to be. You remember the Shawinigan handshake? When I was the president of Treasury Board, I was called Dr. No. So when big banks and their friends and lobbyists came to us and they said to us that they had to merge, like in the US, we got tough. We said no. That is not good for Canada, we said. That is not good for Canadians. And we said no to the bank mergers. And in 1998, 1999, and 2000, there was absolutely no problems with the financial institution in Canada compared to the problem in the South. And when the separatists will not stop trying to destroy Canada with trick questions and sneaky referendum, we got tough. We said no, no more. And we brought in the Clarity Act. When George W. Bush, and in fact almost the entire business establishment here in Canada, said that you have to join the invasion in Iraq, we said, we are not the 51st state. We are an independent country. We are an independent country. We think and act for ourselves, and we said no. It was tough, but it was the right thing to do because it was true to our values as Canadians and as liberals. When you stick to your values, you cannot go wrong. That has been my experience all my life and all my political career. It was true when I had the honor of being Prime Minister, not just in the decisions I'd already mentioned, but in those we don't think of so often or we take for granted, like leading the way on the global treaty to ban landmines, or creating the International Court of Criminal Justice, or bringing very tough gun control laws, or to be the second country in the world to permit same-sex marriage. Or eliminating corporate funding of political parties, and so much more. And we did these things because of our values. Et c'est grâce à ces valeurs que nous avons décidé de mettre de l'ordre dans nos finances publiques. Les dettes que nous venions d'hériter allaient détruire le futur de nos enfants. Après 1995, nous avons eu un autre 9 budgets à surplus sous les libéraux. Depuis 60 ans, il n'y a eu que 10 surplus budgétaires dans les finances canadiennes Et M. Poilievre, c'était toujours des gouvernements libéraux. Alors, les premiers déficits sont arrivés après mon départ, quand Stephen Harper et Poilievre sont retournés nous faire des déficits. Mais je ne devrais pas mettre le nom de Poilievre avec le nom de Harper. Parce que je me sens mal à l'aise. Poilievre est tellement négatif, tellement à droite, que Harper a de l'air raisonnable. Si ça continue comme ça, il va demander à devenir membre du Parti libéral. Et nous avons bénéficié des réformes de 1995 au point de vue financier. Et c'est pourquoi le gouvernement présent a pu investir dans des programmes pour les enfants, dans les soins dentaires. Et malgré la terrible pandémie de COVID, et que le gouvernement a dû dépenser énormément, d'ailleurs comme tous les autres gouvernements dans le monde, le présent gouvernement a réussi à garder le Canada comme le pays qui a le moins de dette per capita de tous les pays du G7. Et au surplus, qui aurait cru qu'alors qu'autrefois nous étions toujours confrontés avec le chômage, aujourd'hui, c'est le manque de main-d'œuvre qui est le principal problème. Je n'aurais jamais pensé voir ça. De me promener dans les maritimes et dans le Québec rural et de voir des affiches partout, nous embauchons. C'est ça que j'aurais jamais pensé voir au Canada. Alors, c'est pourquoi je crois que les Canadiens voudront encore une fois faire confiance aux libéraux à la prochaine élection fédérale. Well, when I left office in 2003, I spoke to the Liberal Convention and I said that Liberals must never, ever lose their social conscience. It is more important today than ever. I am proud that today Canada has an activist, optimistic, socially progressive liberal government. And it's because it's the Liberal Party that is there, because we are part of a strong, vibrant political tradition as old as Canada itself. It's what made us the most successful political party, not just in our country, but in a democratic world. Our party never had to change its name since 1867. That, line from Laurier through King and Saint Laurent, through Pearson and Pierre Elliott Trudeau, myself and Justin Trudeau. And that, my friends, is my message to you. That is why I'm proud to celebrate my election as an MP 60 years ago, my election as Prime Minister 30 years ago, and my proud long life membership in the Liberal Party in my 90th year. Conclusion. Pour finir, je voudrais vous dire, chers amis, et à tous ceux qui nous écoutent, que lorsque j'étais Premier ministre et que j'allais dans les réunions internationales rencontrer les leaders des autres pays, quand je remettais le pied sur le sol canadien, je me disais, je suis donc chanceux d'être un Canadien. Je disais à bien des gens que de tous les leaders du monde, même si c'était très difficile d'être Premier ministre, je croyais que j'étais celui qui avait la tâche la plus facile. Et je comprenais pourquoi il y avait des millions et des millions de personnes dans le monde qui veulent venir partager la citoyenneté canadienne. You know, I understood all the time coming back to Canada after meeting the other leaders of the world, why there are millions and millions of people around the globe who will give their shirt to come and share our so-called miseries. You know why? Because Canada is the land of freedom. Canada is the land of opportunity. Canada is the land of generosity. Canada is the land of stability. Canada is the land of tolerance. Canada is the land of the rule of law. No, Mr. Polyev, Canada is not broken. Canada is the land that makes the envy of the world. Canada is still the best, and vive le Canada!
C'est vraiment bon. C'est vraiment bon. Merci tout le monde. Vous êtes encore en forme pas mal?
Je suis en forme, oui.
Vous êtes encore pas mal en forme, hein? On vous regarde tout le monde, mais écoutez...
C'est parce que je bois de l'eau du lac des Piles comme toi.
Oui, il y a quelque chose dans l'eau chez Winigal. Écoutez, il y a beaucoup à dire sur vous. Il y a beaucoup à parler ensemble. Mais avant de faire ça, M. Chrétien, permettez-moi de rendre hommage à quelqu'un. Je veux rendre hommage à quelqu'un qui vous a accompagné toute votre vie. Je veux rendre hommage à une personne qui a marqué votre carrière politique à plusieurs égards, parce que j'ai été témoin à plusieurs occasions. Je veux rendre hommage à quelqu'un qui a probablement été votre plus grande conseillère. Je veux rendre hommage, et évidemment, je parle ici d'une femme de cœur. Je parle d'une femme de tête. Je parle d'une femme d'exception. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand up to honor the memory of Jean Chrétien. M. Chrétien, parlez-nous d'elle un peu. Parce que Mme Chrétien, tu sais, on parle souvent de M. Chrétien, but I had the opportunity to meet Mme Chrétien. Say us a few words about her.
You know, I always say that she was my rock of Gibraltar. Quand je l'ai demandé en mariage, je l'ai avisé que j'irais un jour en politique. C'était parti du contrat de mariage.
Vous êtes un bon avocat.
Et elle a tenu parole. Et elle m'a accompagné partout. Et elle me faisait honneur partout. And as I explained to you, you know, she will travel the world. And she was, in many ways, exceptional. I will tell you one thing. So when I had Team Canada, you remember I had Team Canada. I will take 500
Oh, yes, I remember.
businessmen and the premiers and so on. And we had the premiers with us. And their spouse. So Aline in France had to organize their program when we were in all these countries around the world. And we were traveling the premier together. So having the premiers with me in the plane, it was easy to solve the problems. I didn't have to confront them in front of the camera in Canada, because you know in politics it's always like that. When a mayor has a problem, he blames the provincial government. When a provincial government has a problem, he blames the federal government.
And who could you blame?
And we cannot blame the king or the queen anymore, so we blame the Americans once in a while. So Aline, when the premiers were coming back, and they will discuss problems with Ottawa, you know, the role of Aline was very visible, because the wives of the premiers will say to their husband, "Don't give elle to Jean en France, and Aline will be mad at us." So she was the best instrument for federal-provincial relations.
Vous avez mentionné 3 chiffres. Vous avez parlé de 30, vous avez parlé de 60, vous avez parlé de 90. Moi, j'aimerais vous amener sur le chiffre 20. Le 17 mars 2003, you took probably one of the most consequential decisions for Canadians. You took a decision that was not very popular at the time. You took a decision that still marks the time today, and I'm bringing you back, obviously, to Iraq. Tell to everyone here, yeah, a big round of applause, because that was a moment in Canada. This is like a kitchen family dinner. Tell us a bit about the background noise that you received at the time. Amenez-nous dans les coulisses à l'époque, parce que ce n'était pas une décision facile où les alliés vous ont appelé. Je vous ai déjà entendu nous parler que vous avez eu quelques conversations de coulisses. Amenez-nous là.
Eh bien, on savait que ça s'en venait, et on le savait des mois à l'avance, parce que tout le monde en parlait. Et ils essayaient de nous convaincre. Et on écoutait les arguments. In August, I was in Detroit and Windsor with George W. Bush for a Canada-United States border problem. And I had a communication, an hour and a half with him. And he tried to convince me. And I said, you know, I'm not comfortable with the documentation that they gave to me about weapon of mass destruction. So he said to me, yeah, I'm sure it's true, and so on. I said, I will send you some of my experts. And I said, no, I don't want to have your expert. I have my own expert. They will give me the information. I think I have the information. And I've written in one of my books that there was not enough proof to convince the judge at the municipal court in Quebec, in Shawinigan. So
we are lucky that you were a lawyer.
Yeah, of course. And so I said, but if you don't have the UN, we won't go with you. It was 6 months before. And I believe that with what you have as proof of weapon of mass destruction, the UN will not approve it. And it did not. So they knew. And everybody thought that Bush was to be very mad with me, but not. He said to me, or it was his chief of staff said to me, one of the two, we were all talking about it because I said, you must be very mad at me. They said, no, we're disappointed. They told me we expected Canada to be with us. Before of what I was telling, because I made speeches before that, in Chicago, for example, and so on. They said, oh, that's the old fox Chrétien, who is preparing himself, but at the end of the day, he will be with us. And they said, we did not believe you, and we should have believed you. So you did not double-cross us, you had told us. And I know others who had said yes and were not there. For me, I was frank. I had told them the truth that I delivered. And Tony Blair, in South Africa, we had a beer after a meeting, and Bruce Hartley was there, and the lady Prime Minister of New Zealand, Madame Clark, was there, another person. And Tony had a different argument. He will tell me, Jean, we have to get rid of Saddam Hussein. He's a terrible dictator. And I said, Tony, if we are in the business of replacing guys we don't like, why don't we replace in the family the leader of the Zimbabwe next door? We were in South Africa. You know, Mugabe, I'm not very comfortable with him. Oh, he said, John, there is a big difference between Mugabe and Saddam Hussein. Oh, I said, yes, there is a big distinction. Saddam has no oil. He did not talk to me for a year after that.
Vous avez été premier ministre, certes, mais les gens se rappellent de vous aussi comme un jeune militant du Parti libéral. We are with a group of people here, Prime Minister. We have about 1/3 of all the people in this room which are young people. And believe it or not, we have 44% of people that it's their very first convention. Please raise your hand if it's your first convention. Look at that. Prime Minister, you must have one advice or two for these young people who are looking at you and a career of service. Dites-nous un peu dans votre première assemblée libérale. Parlez-nous un peu de votre expérience. Qu'est-ce que vous diriez à ces jeunes-là qui sont en train d'additionner? Parce qu'une chose que vous m'avez dit en politique, qu'est-ce qu'on fait? On additionne. Comment on fait avec ces jeunes-là qui sont avec nous? Parlez-nous de votre expérience quand vous étiez un jeune militant.
Ben moi, je vais vous dire, je suis devenu avocat, mais je ne voulais pas être un avocat. Je voulais être un architecte. Mais mon père trouvait que j'étais un enfant qui avait beaucoup d'énergie, voulait avoir un politicien dans la famille. Et il a décidé très jeune que j'allais devenir un politicien. Alors, comme un père entraîne son fils à devenir un joueur de hockey, à 13 ans, je distribuais des pamphlets, je posais des pancartes sur les murs, je plaçais les chaises pour les assemblées politiques.
À 13 ans?
À 13 ans, 14 ans, 15 ans. Puis quand c'était le temps de choisir, when it was the time to choose a profession, my dad had trained me. I said, I want to be an architect. Dad said, you will never be elected as an architect. I'm sorry, guys, I wanted to be an architect. So he said to me, you go to the law school. And in those days, when Dad said something, we'll listen. Apparently, it's not like that anymore. And I went to the law school, and the first, I joined the Liberal Club. Second year, I was the president. And I was 23. I was in Ottawa for the convention that selected Mike Pearson to be the leader. Wow. I was the president of the Liberal Club at Laval University. I I had been elected vice president of the Canadian University Liberal Federation, and I was not speaking English. But they understood me that way. And
we still do.
Oh, yeah.
We still do.
So I started very young. And I will tell you one thing about politics. One day I was interviewed in Shawinigan for a film, for the TV. And there was a person, Omer Hill. He was an old liberal organizer. He was very old. He was 75. And he had a very unusual face with big cracks and beautiful blue eyes. And the guy said, we don't see faces like that very often. Can we interview him? So I asked Omer. Je dis, Omer, faut-il parler à la télévision? Il n'est jamais trop tard pour commencer. And so he gave an interview. They said, how come you're still organizing? Oh, he said, yeah. I said, he had told them I started very young. And he said, in politics, it's interesting, it's challenging, and we make friends. And we never let a friend down. So it's why I'm still organizing for Jean. So, get involved. You might even become prime minister or minister of everything. Or, you know, it's fun and it is useful and is, you know, I wanted to be a politician. And I did that all my life. And when they dump on politician, I don't like it. Because we're there to serve. We're there to make life better for citizens. We can influence the movement of the country. And we do this. And we have the privilege to feel that we can debate. We don't win all the arguments. No. But we're making progress together. Alors, allez-y les jeunes. It's a lot of fun.
So you get it. Let's go together. Monsieur le Premier ministre, vous avez déjà dit que personne n'a le monopole des bonnes idées. Et si vous en avez une bonne, prenez garde que peut-être que je voudrais la voler. C'est quoi la meilleure idée que vous avez prise à quelqu'un d'autre que vous avez mis en application? Dites-nous ça ensemble, on est en famille ce soir.
Non, beaucoup.
Oui?
Ah, oui.
Donnez-nous-en une ou deux, là, on est en famille.
Oui, mais quand ils vous disent « fais ça », puis que vous le faites, puis qu'ensuite qu'ils viennent vous dire « vous avez volé mon idée », je leur dis « ben fermez-la ». Ne me dites pas de faire quelque chose qui a de l'allure, moi le faire. And when I was traveling in the world, I had to explain that because we, the liberal, we're the radical center. People, when I'm traveling in the world, they are all confused. You're liberal in Canada. In Europe, a liberal is a center-right. Yeah. Very strong on human rights, though. But they are sometimes a bit conservative. And in the United States, they're perceived as left-winger. So I had to explain what was a liberal in Canada. I was saying Canada is when the people on the left says of you, you're a right-winger. And when the people on the right says of you, you're a left-winger, you're a...
With a guy which was called Clinton,
yeah,
which she seemed to have a very, very close relationship. I remember once, you kind of even avoided the Secret Service together, and you started running somewhere with him. The only thing he didn't know is that you run much faster than him. And I think we'll have a picture that shows that you even helped President Clinton to climb a certain wall. And since Chrétien is faster than him, I think you kind of push him across the wall. No. Now, we're supposed to have the picture. It's going to come. Don't worry. The folks, that's how technology is. But
what happened is this.
What? Tell us.
We were in a G7 or G8 in Great Britain. We were in a whole castle in the rural part. And when we are at this meeting, we stop for coffee breaks. And the coffee breaks become bilaterals. So I was there with my friend Bill Clinton, and we went to have a chit-chat. We went in the back, and suddenly there was a forest there. And suddenly I realized there was no bodyguard. I said, Bill, we escape. Alors on est parti à courir,
Ouais.
puis on est rentré dans le bois. Et là, ils nous ont perdu de vue. Et là, on a marché dans le bois. We walk in the bush, and we walk in the bush. And the bodyguards were getting crazy. So we came back from a field, and when they saw us, about half a dozen bodyguards of Americans joined. They were not happy with him. And for me, I don't need bodyguards. I grabbed them by the neck.
No show it again and shake on the stage.
And so when we arrive at the so-called picture you don't have,
I'm responsible for innovation.
yeah, you have some work to do. And so when we arrived at the wall, it was about 6 feet of stone, and there was a ramp in concrete. So we had to go around. I said, Bill, let's jump. And you know how competitive I am. I was up, my feet was on the ramp, and poor Bill could not get up. He was having too many McDonald's in those days. Now he does not eat them anymore. And so that became a very famous pictures. Because I had beaten the American daddy nicely. I was only 14 years older than him.
So, Prime Minister, I see that the clock is running and flashing, so that must mean that our time is gone. But in conclusion, I've been in the hall for the last 2 days, and everyone has a question. The 4,000 people in this room have a question. What are you going to do when you retire?
Retirement doesn't want me, that's a problem. But you have to keep working. I enjoy it. And if you can make some contributions, it's good. Because, now we live longer. I remember when we started the old age pension plan, the average of life expectancy was 65 years. It's why they pick up 65. No, that was the average to help those who were above average.
I hope there was other reasons.
No, that was, it was a hell of a big...
There's a few
And now
journalists.
the problem, my family, we're trying to increase the average. I had a sister who was 98, and I had a brother who died at 99, so I said to Julie, faut que tu battes ton frère Gabi. Il est mort à 99 ans. Faut que tu ailles plus que 99 ans. You have to go to 100, I said. And she said to me, Jean, I will have to go to 100 because you want one of us to go to 100. And the 3 who are left are all boys. And it's only us, the girls, who can go to 100. So when she turned 100, she called the nurse. And the nurse said, what's wrong? She said, I'm 100 years old since 10 minutes, and I wanted to tell that to somebody. So it's the average, the gene, the pollution of my youth, because Shawinigan was an extremely polluted city.
Oh, it's much better now. There's a good MP.
Yeah. He came to see the old man to know how to do it.
That's true. Ladies and gentlemen, le premier ministre du Canada, Jean Chrétien. Merci tout le monde. Let's seize the moment. Let's be ambitious. Vive le Canada! Tout le monde.
Merci. La prochaine conversation commence à peu. Oui. So whenever you want.
Merci beaucoup, M. Chrystia Champagne. La prochaine conversation commencera sous peu. The next discussion will begin shortly. Please take your seats. The session will start shortly. Veuillez vous asseoir. La session va bientôt commencer. Merci.
Okay. Introduce Sarasha. Yeah, they're saying backstage. Okay. Oh, good.
Now, please join me in welcoming. Veuillez accueillir la députée d'Outremont, Rachel Bendayan.
Bonsoir tout le monde. Liberal friends from across the country, comment ça va? Mon Dieu, ça fait du bien de se voir. Et qu'est-ce qu'on fait ici tous ensemble? Nous discutons, nous débattons de l'avenir de notre formation politique, de l'avenir que nous voulons pour notre pays. We're talking about the future of the Liberal Party of Canada. We're talking about the future of our country. And that, my friends, is a big deal. And that is why two extraordinary people with extraordinary life experiences and perspectives are about to take the stage. Now, there have been some stories lately, and this one's true, that one day, a few weeks ago, Chrystia called the former secretary, as one does, and says, "Hey, would you like to come to Ottawa to talk about the future of the Liberal Party, to talk about the future of Canada with me and 4,000 of my friends?" As one does. And only our very own Deputy Prime Minister could do that. Only our Chrystia. Mes amis, quel immense plaisir pour moi de vous présenter notre prochaine invitée d'honneur. The former senator from New York and the First Lady elected to the U.S. Senate. The woman who spoke directly to all the little girls who were watching, and boy, were we all watching. The woman who championed public health care, stronger gun control, democracy around the world, and so much more. The 67th Secretary of State of the United States of America. The woman who nearly 30 years ago, went to Beijing, the People's Republic of China, and stood up and said, "Women's rights are human rights." The only major party female candidate to run for the presidency of the United States in its history. The woman who was responsible for the millions and millions of cracks in the glass ceiling that still hangs above our heads, and the woman who ensured that the path will be a little easier next time. Ladies and gentlemen, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and your Deputy Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland!
Remarkable woman. So, yeah. Secretary Clinton, bienvenue au Canada. On est tellement, tellement content de vous voir. Oui? Est-ce qu'on est contente? On vous admire énormément et c'est un honneur pour nous tous que vous êtes ici avec nous aujourd'hui. You know, I know that we're all correctly very excited that Secretary Clinton is here. Yeah. And I want to start on a little bit of a serious note. And I want to start by reading something that Secretary Clinton said on November 9th, 2016. Oh my God, I'm starting to cry now. I think all of us heard you say this, and I think all of us cried. So this is what you said. And to all the women, especially the young women, who put their faith in this campaign and in me, I want you to know that nothing has made me prouder than to be your champion. Now, I know we still have not shattered that highest and hardest glass ceiling, but someday someone will, and hopefully sooner than we might think right now. Now, Secretary Clinton, what I want to say to you, I just really want to pay tribute to you on behalf of everybody in this room, but maybe especially the women, and maybe especially the young women. I really mean it because, you know, they call you a trailblazer. I call you a trailblazer. And we're Canadian, so like we like hiking in the bush. We like cross-country skiing. And you know the person who is the trail breaker? That's the person who, if you're skiing or you're hiking, they get out in front. They have to break the path through the snow. They have to break the path through the bush. They get all those branches in their face and slapping at you. And, you know, when I go hiking or skiing with my dad, the trail breaker gets the first beer when you get home. But the trail breaker is the person who gets bruised and who gets beaten up, but who makes things so much easier for everyone who follows you.
Well,
First, let me just say how thrilled I am to be here at the Liberal Party conference, to see such enthusiasm, such excitement, to have had the opportunity to listen backstage and look on the big screen as our longtime friend, your former Prime Minister, Jean Chrétien, spoke, and now to be here with the Deputy Prime Minister to talk about whatever's on her mind and whatever is pertinent to the incredible record that the Liberal Party has here in Canada. And so I personally am just delighted to be here because in many ways, the Liberal Party of Canada is a trailbreaker. And the things that over the history of this party you have achieved for Canada have not only improved the lives and opportunities of your fellow Canadians, but have also, sort of set a trail for others to try to follow. So I'm thrilled to be with all of you today.
Well, thank you very much for that. And, a person who is on his way to the coronation right now, but who right now is the guy skiing in front, breaking through the snow, getting beaten up, is our amazing Prime Minister. And we have to remember he's breaking the trail for us, right? And when he gets beaten up, it's for all of us. I know we remember that. One of the things that is remarkable about his leadership is he is a truly feminist Prime Minister. And that is reflected in his cabinet. But even more importantly, it's reflected in our policies. And one thing, I'm going to brag to you, Secretary Clinton, okay?
Well, it is a political conference.
Right, okay.
That's okay with me.
And we had a conversation yesterday on this stage about how Canadians, we think bragging is rude. I know you spend a lot of time in Canada. Louise Penny will tell you, we think it's bad. But we have to learn to brag a little bit more. So my brag to you right now is we now have a national system of early learning and childcare. Actually true.
It is not bragging if it's real. And I think it's important in today's political world to get out there and make sure people know what you've done. $10 a day for childcare, that's extraordinary. That's an incredible accomplishment.
We think so. And it is amazing that we've actually done it. You said, not just famously, but transformatively in Beijing, that women's rights are human rights. Shocking that that would be a shocking thing, but it was, and it still is. We say now, feminist policy is economic policy. Because our early learning and childcare, we're going to get to $10 a day by 2025. Right now, we've already cut fees by 50%. And that makes life so much better for working families. It means women don't have to choose between kids and a career anymore. But you know what? I'm the finance minister, the economy, very focused on, loved what Prime Minister Chrétien had to say about fiscal policy, just by the way. Yay, Prime Minister Chrétien. Having early learning and childcare, we now have the highest women's labor force participation rate in Canadian history. For working age women, it is 85%. I'm sorry to say just 77% in the US. So that's the difference feminist economic policy makes. But I want to talk to you about another feminist issue where you were sadly prescient. During the election campaign in 2016, your campaign put out a press release after a Supreme Court decision on abortion rights. And you warned Americans that they should not take abortion rights for granted, that the president appoints Supreme Court justices, and the decision in the election could be a decision on abortion rights. I'm so sorry that you were so smart and that you predicted things. That's terrible. But tell us what the path is now.
Well, you said a lot of things that I want to respond to, so thank you for that. First of all, I did have to, kind of let out a laugh when I heard Jean talking about surpluses, because he and my husband still get together, and, occasionally they'll have a late night conversation, and honest to goodness, they talk about surpluses. Other things as well, but, they're both pretty proud of, what they achieved. But I think the idea of a feminist set of policies, a feminist economic policy, is exactly where you need to be if you want to increase economic opportunity and economic output. And what you've done with childcare is a signal that you want to make it possible for half the population, potentially half the workforce, to be engaged, to pursue whatever their dreams and ambitions and interests might be. And, this is not just a nice thing to do. I mean, if you look at economic output, if you look at the GDP of advanced countries, let alone every other country, developing countries and developed, there is absolutely no doubt, no argument any longer that if you recognize the importance of making it possible for women to be both in the formal workforce and taking care of family responsibilities if they have them, you will increase the GDP of your nation. It doesn't matter whether you're Canada or the United States or any other country. And to continue to ignore that, to deny that, to act as though things like paid family leave and quality affordable childcare are luxuries, is to hobble your economy as well as hobble women's dreams and aspirations. And there has been an enormous amount of progress around the world on behalf of women's rights and opportunities and their full participation in society in every aspect since the Beijing conference in 1995. Because people, very nicely remember my speech and what I had to say there, but they often don't know or don't recall that there was a platform for action that was unanimously passed. Every nation, I think it was 178 or 80 nations, all signed off on this platform for action. And think about some of the challenges we had back in 1995. In most of the world, domestic violence was considered cultural, not criminal. In most of the world, there were restrictions on women's access to education that were either legal or cultural. Access to health care was by no means as available as it needed to be. There were obstacles for women being in the formal workforce. There were obstacles to voting, to inheriting property. The list goes on. So we have made progress, but we are in much of the world, and I would argue, including in my own country, engaged in a struggle as to whether we fall back or are pushed back or continue to move forward together. And if you take the issue of reproductive choice and you realize that this has been a strategy for a very long time by forces within the United States to reverse Roe v. Wade, you realize that it is restricting women's autonomy, women's choices, and it is endangering women's lives. And that will be one of the big issues in the 2024 presidential election in the United States. So we have to recognize that despite the progress, we are still, sadly, seeing a lot of pushback, and it got worse because of COVID. You know, COVID had so many impacts on our mental and physical health, on our relationships to one another, on how we work, how we, communicate. I mean, it just truly was in many ways a transformative experience that none of us planned for, expected, and now are still living with the consequences. But in many parts of the world, child marriage went back up after it had gone down. Domestic violence went back up. Jobs were lost, particularly among women who had to. We had no choice to be in the workforce when jobs were closed or children were at home. And there was just such a disruption in how life was unfolding, and the consequences are still, as I say, being felt. So we lost some ground. We're trying to slowly pick that back up. But make no mistake about it, in our country, there is a very significant historical struggle going on about whether we move forward or the clock is turned back. And so you'll hear a lot of the political debate and rhetoric coming from across your southern border, where people are going to be, very engaged and passionate about trying to have an election on real issues, not on diversions, not on efforts to flood our political zone with mis and disinformation, but to really try to come to grips with the choices that are before the American people. And I would predict that you're going to have some of that, in the next election, whenever it is for you, because there are, forces in your own country that are trying to figure out whether they can tinker with the clock and maybe turn it back a little.
There sure are, Secretary Clinton. There sure are. Our intention is for the next election to be in 2025, right? And I think we need to really listen carefully to Secretary Clinton's warning. And maybe our southern, really wonderful friends and neighbors in 2016, you did warn them. We see what happened. There's a great saying from Bismarck, only a fool learns from his own mistakes. So let's not do that, guys. And our party, Madam Secretary, we will always stand with a woman's right to choose. We know what that means, always. For sure. And I think, as the Secretary said, let's not take what we have for granted. Let's really, really not. Let's not sit on our hands and let forces of reaction turn back the clock. But I do want to ask you, Secretary, a little bit about those diversions. And you talked about progress since that amazing speech in Beijing. I'm a liberal. I believe in progress. And I think about my own life and my mother's life. So much easier, so much better. But I had a kind of sobering conversation yesterday with my riding association, the people in my community who support me. And the president of the U of T Young Liberals, a wonderful young woman called Avi, was in the group. And she said, you know, when I see, yeah, if Avi is here, yay for Avi, yay for the young liberals, all young liberals. You are wonderful. Thank you for being here. But she said something that really horrified me. And I know you're a mother. I know you're a grandmother to an 8-year-old girl. Avi said, you know, when I look at social media, and she said specifically, when I look at the comments made about me, I can't believe people would say mean things about me, but apparently they do, about you and Minister Anand, I just kind of think, why would I want to do that? Why would I go out there and be part of that? Now, I told her that my own reaction is tell them to bad word off. And that is my reaction. Also, I just don't read those things. I find they don't bug me so much that way. But it really worried me that young women would feel that things are getting worse, not better. Do you think that's happening, and what should we do about it?
Well, I certainly think online, the level of vicious commenting and personal attacks is just epidemic. And it has serious consequences because, as young Abby was telling you, young people are living so much of their lives online. I mean, part of the reason you can say, oh, I don't pay any attention to that is because, you're in the...
Are you saying because I'm old? Yes,
no, I wasn't saying that.
I'm going to be 55
I was saying you're living in the real world, and that's where you form your relationships, and you came to social media when you were a more mature person, yes. But think about if you spend an enormous amount of time staring at a screen and scrolling through social media and searching for clues about how you will be perceived and what you want to do and whether you're being included in your friends group or not. I mean, there is a lot of evidence that there is a connection, a correlation, if not a causation, a correlation between social media and the messages that it conveys and increasing levels of anxiety and depression and eating disorders and even, heaven forbid, suicide, right? Because it's real to young people who have lived in that world. And I have to confess, and I am a lot older than you, I have to confess that I am, the queen of attacks and Exhibit A for what, people say about you.
And you're still standing.
And I'm still standing, but part of the reason is because I have learned to take criticism seriously, but not personally. Okay. And it's really, really important to try to learn that lesson. Sometimes your critics, even though you hate it, sometimes your critics will teach you things or tell you things your friends won't. And you have to have enough willingness to be able to say, oh, well, maybe I didn't do that as well as I should, or maybe I ought to try something different. That's how you should take criticism. But if you are living in the online world and all you get is criticism or potential criticism, you begin to take it personally, and you are going to be impacted by taking it personally. So part of what we have to do is equip our young people better to deal with that, because it's there, it's not going away. But secondly, we have to do a better job of protecting young people, and really anybody online, but particularly young people, from the most virulent, vicious kinds of attacks. If you follow some of the studies that have been done about people who get attacked online, it's predominantly women who put themselves into the public arena, whether it's politics or entertainment or business or journalism. There is just an overreaction and an effort to try to drag that person down. So you have to be personally equipped, but you also have to look for ways, I think, to try to rein in some of the excesses, because the misogyny and the sexism online is really bad, and it's only going to get worse. And I'll tell you a quick story. So we're now moving into artificial intelligence writ large. We're moving into deep fakes online. Well, a few years ago, I think it was 2018, Nancy Pelosi, the great political leader in our country, somebody created a deep fake, and they took words. So took words out of this speech over here, that conversation over there, put it together in order to make her look drunk, and posted it. Now, number one, she doesn't drink, so that was a problem, but never let the truth stand in the way of a good fake. And it just went viral. And, you know, her office and her friends and allies like me were really, we were upset for her, but we were also very worried at what this portended. So several of us, you know, we contacted the online platforms. YouTube took it down. Twitter took it down. Facebook said, no, we're not taking it down because we think our customers can tell the difference. They get to make up their own mind. Now, that was with a relatively primitive fake. You will be running in 2025, and you will face more online fakes, fake videos of you, fake videos of the Prime Minister, fake videos of other leaders of the Liberal Party. This is coming. So get ready and try to prevent as much as you can, but also protect against it.
Okay, I think that is really, really good advice. We will do that. I love your taking criticism seriously, but not personally. That is really wise. There are a lot of people who are fans here of Kathleen Wynne. And and she's former Premier of Ontario, and she said to me early on, you need to have a thick skin, but not too thick. You need to let some of that criticism penetrate. I wonder whether women think that a little more than men. Just saying. Just saying. But it is very wise advice. Incredible.
Well, but I think that one of the, traits we have been acquiring and need to acquire is, the ability to blow through criticism and not let it bother you and not be brought down by it and keep smiling and keep moving on. The Liberal Party in Canada is an optimistic, progressive, forward-looking party, right? And so part of the opposition's approach, it seems to me, is to try to bring down that level of optimism and positivity and confidence. And it's something you have to keep in mind. So, I do think women, because we're still relatively new to the political arena, obviously we've been there a while, but nowhere near as long as men. There are techniques, there are tactics, there are strategies that you have to acquire and use, and that's one of them. You just keep going in the face of whatever the criticism and the attacks might be.
I think we can learn a lot from you on how to do that. Okay, I want to change gear a little bit and talk about another issue that I know Secretary Clinton has worked on so much and knows so much about, and we all care about a lot. And this is the illegal and barbaric Russian invasion of Ukraine. You just yesterday at the 92nd Street Y had a really great conversation with President Clinton, David Rubenstein, and you said that we can't trust Putin you, a long time ago, said he's a former KGB agent, he has no soul. And you said we have to, and you said we have to support Ukraine to ensure that Ukraine wins and has a strong position at the bargaining table. What does it, And I spoke to the Ukrainian Prime Minister this morning, Denis Shmyhal, and I mentioned that we would be talking tonight. He said, please thank Hillary and tell her how grateful we are for all of her support. So it is really recognized. What does it mean supporting Ukraine? What should we be doing right now?
Well, the first thing is to recognize that Ukraine's fight for freedom and against Russian aggression is our fight. It is not just their fight. And the reason the reason I say that is because we're dealing with a leader and a system that has been trying to restore the Russian empire that was preceded the Soviet Union, but which, the collapse of the Soviet Union led Putin to say it was like the greatest catastrophe in human history. This is a long-term mission for Vladimir Putin. And part of what we saw happen was him invading Georgia, seizing 2 provinces, 2 states within Georgia. We all sanctioned him. We gave speeches about it. We, expressed our absolute opposition, but nobody really did much. Think of the lesson Putin took from that. Okay, probe, probe, probe. He kind of really follows that old Leninist line about, probe with the scalpel till you hit bone. He hadn't hit bone. Nobody was causing much of a fuss. That was 2008. Then, 2014, he invades Ukraine for the first time. And again, it was, oh my gosh, we wish he wouldn't do that. It's really unfortunate. But we've got other things we have to focus on and other places that we have to pay attention to. So the message that he got was, okay, I can go that far. I can actually invade places and get away with it. And I can also interfere with elections. I can suborn politicians. I can buy my way into influencing media and pretending that I'm not, because I want to undermine democracy. And you just have to accept that is, in his mind, the great challenge to his mission of restoring Russian greatness. When I was Secretary of State, there was this moment where Putin had decided, for his own reasons, that he wasn't going to be president anymore. He was going to be prime minister, and Medvedev was going to be president. And we got a lot done with Medvedev during that interim period. And one of the things we tried to really persuade, and I say we meaning President Obama and I, was that, Russia didn't have to be as dependent upon a natural resource economy. They could develop a technology economy. Think of all the Russian expats living in Canada, the United States, Europe, who are starting businesses, who are so successful. And Medvedev seemed quite interested in that. And we sent him out to Silicon Valley. We, gave him an opportunity to think hard about what they could do maybe in Russia to really create that kind of entrepreneurial environment. And Putin said no. Because if you're going to encourage people to be free-thinking in business, whoa, that's a threat to the state eventually. And the reason he got so crosswise with me and spent a lot of time and effort working to defeat me is because, I said that, number one, they could have had a different future, but number two, when he decided to go back to be president, they ran these very crooked elections, and thousands of Russians poured into the street to protest. And Putin blamed me. He couldn't come to grips with the fact that the Russian people felt like maybe there was this moment, maybe they would be able to chart a different future. No, he blamed me for the protests in the Russian streets. So that's just a little background for who we're dealing with. And the
do you think he had a personal animosity directly against you? Did he see you as a particular threat to him?
Oh my God. Well, I mean, he's on record saying that, but we also have intercepted intelligence where the Russian military intelligence, the GRU, a top official, a general, is giving orders to the people who are, spreading misinformation about me. And basically we have an intercept which says, here are your orders. Don't say anything unfavorable about Trump or Sanders. We support them, but do anything you can to hurt Hillary Clinton. So yeah, I mean, we understood that. In a perverse way, it is sort of flattering.
It
obviously.
is. It is.
But
perverse, but a mark of honor.
Yeah, but I tell those stories because I want you to understand you're dealing with someone who is not only narcissistic and megalomaniacal, but totally untrustworthy. And because he thinks he is, as I say, on this mission to restore Russian greatness, as he defines it. But what that means is he's committing war crimes. He is now been charged by the International Court with a form of genocide, which is the kidnapping of Ukrainian children and sending them to Russia to destroy populations. So it is in our interest to stop them. And when I sometimes hear commentators, basically saying things like, well, you've got to understand his position. I say, go talk to a Pole or an Estonian or a Lithuanian or a Latvian or a Finn or a Swede. They know what his real objective is, and they know we've got to stop him.
Canada agrees. The Liberal Party agrees. Do you want to give us some thoughts on what specifically we need to do to stop him?
Well, we have to continue to provide as much military support to Ukraine. I mean, they're doing the fighting. They're fighting and dying. They are the ones who are literally on the front lines to save their country and to create a bulwark for democracy. And I wish we would do even more. I wish we would speed up the delivery of everything that they need. I wish all of our countries, yours, mine, everybody in the alliance, dig deep, send them anything we can send them, because if they are going to start a spring offensive once the ground is dry enough, they're going to need it, because what you've seen with this Russian invasion is an absolute disregard by the Russian leadership, both Putin and the military leaders, total disregard for the lives of their own people. They have lost, by the last estimate, maybe 100,000, which is just an astonishing figure. And they have, emptied prisons to send people to go fight with the mercenaries, the Wagner's army. But they do have a lot of ammunitions, and they have a lot of long-range missiles, and they still control a lot of the airspace. And, we need to do everything even more quickly to help them. The only way that I see there could be some potential stopping point in the war, and it's really up to the Ukrainians. None of us should be telling them what they should do in order to protect their sovereignty and their people. But if the Ukrainians were successful in pushing the Russians out of the territory they have seized since last February. Then there might be an opportunity for some kind of leverage by the Ukrainians at a negotiating table, but it's going to require the Ukrainians deciding they've gone as far as they think they have gone, not us substituting our judgment for them. And the best way to end Putin's aggression is for Ukraine to win. And that means we have to give them more help.
And how about China, Madam Secretary? Now, I have heard some people make the argument, maybe particularly some Republicans, that supporting, we shouldn't be paying too much attention to Ukraine, we shouldn't be devoting too many resources there, because the focus needs to be on China. I've heard you make a different argument about the connection between our support for Ukraine. So what does a Ukrainian victory mean for China, for geopolitics?
It would be disastrous if Ukraine does not win in terms of unleashing Chinese aggression, right? So let me just back up a second. I think part of the reason Putin invaded when he did was because he believed, and had reason to believe, that if the former guy, whose name shall go unmentioned, had been re-elected president, he was going to pull the United States out of NATO. Then it would have been a cakewalk, right? So once it was clear, despite some people's attempt to deny the reality of our election, once it was clear that Joe Biden had won, Putin felt there was no reason to wait. And he was also testing the transatlantic alliance. He was testing particularly the Europeans and the American and Canadian resolve as to whether or not we would do anything to support Ukraine. Now, I believed that there was a real possibility that within the next 3 years, Xi Jinping, who had decided he was going to be leader for life, and was publicly saying he didn't want to pass on the problem of Taiwan to someone else, that meant that they were going to move against Taiwan in a relatively, short period of time. The invasion of Ukraine's failure, because Putin thought he could capture Ukraine and install a puppet regime literally within a week, and they had puppets waiting in the wings, sent a very strong message to China that, whoa, wait a minute, this is not working out the way we thought it would, because you remember Putin went to see Xi before he launched the invasion.
Friendship without limits.
Yes, that's right. Friendship without limits. So all of a sudden you saw China being much more cautious. They have not provided as much support as I think Putin expected or has asked for, because they're trying to figure out, okay, how do we play this? Because look at what happened. It wasn't just that the Ukrainians on their own repelled the initial Russian invasion. It was that fairly quickly in political years, we began supplying military equipment and support, and we began imposing sanctions. Now, the sanctions on Russia are focused on what Russia has to export, which is largely its, fossil fuel production. China has a huge export, business with the entire world. A lot of consumer goods as well as hard goods and everything else. So think of you're sitting in Beijing and the world largely comes together behind sanctions on Russia over energy, which is really, really hard to sanction because it has such consequences for people's lives and for industrial production. But the world does it. And the Europeans, who nobody thought would be able to endure the kind of cutbacks that they had to face, they kept going and they didn't give up. So you're sitting in a meeting in Beijing and you're looking at the whole range of stuff that could be sanctioned if you go into Taiwan. And all of a sudden you're going, whoa, we got to think this through. We can't be quite as sure that we will do this and nobody will respond. So I think the calculus that the Chinese leadership, largely Xi, are going through now is they are still intent upon doing to Taiwan what they did to Hong Kong. Remember, they broke their agreement with Taiwan, right? With Hong Kong. They signed an agreement that, it would be allowed to continue with its democratic
one country, two systems.
Yeah, that's right. One country, two systems. They would be a free market. They'd have all kinds of trading and contractual legal protections that are not available in China, and they would have a democratic governance. And they just blew through it and decided, we're tired of that. We're taking over Hong Kong. So there should be no doubt that that's what they intend to do to Taiwan. So the challenge is, how do we increase the deterrence and send the messages that either slow them down or make them rethink? And to that end, I really believe that you've seen some positive developments. So there's a very positive development with the Philippines, once again opening military bases to U.S. forces. The Japanese are building up a defense budget, something that they have not done since World War II, in part because they have ongoing territorial disputes with Russia, and they have lots of historic issues, obviously, between them and China. South Korea, the South Korean president was just in Washington. Australia now is going to get nuclear submarines. The relationship between Japan, Australia, India, the United States, to try to begin to figure out how strategically to prevent China from continuing to be aggressive in the Pacific. All of that is happening. So people are paying attention to that, and we're trying to, do a better job sending a message of deterrence to China.
Now, I agree with you, Madam Secretary, that the single strongest message of deterrence we can send to China is a decisive Ukrainian victory. That is something. That is the message that says to all the world's dictators, you know what? Democracy is prepared to fight back, and democracy can actually win. Right. And I do have to do a little small Canadian brag on the sanctions front. Canada was the first G7 country, I think the first country in the world to withdraw most favored nation trading status from Russia. We were the first country to ban the import of Russian oil and gas. So we are there at the cutting edge, as we should be. But this fight between democracy and dictatorship, obviously it is the bloodiest and the most lethal in the trenches of Bakhmut. But I think it's happening in our society and in yours. How worried are you about that? And what should we be doing to defend our democracies at home?
I think you're absolutely right. And it is quite surprising, even shocking to me, that we have elected leaders in the United States who seem enamored of authoritarianism and authoritarian leaders. We had a former president who expressed his admiration for Putin, for Orban in Hungary, and others. And we have people in our press and in public life who are very attracted to the idea that, democracy is so messy. I mean, you got to deal with people you don't agree with and you don't even like, and you have to compromise, and it takes so much time. I mean, let's just cut to the chase. Let's have leaders who will make the decisions for us, tell us what to do, and then we don't have to worry about it. There is a sad unfortunate development in a lot of our democracies, that there's an attraction by forces largely on the right now that are undermining democracy because of their disregard for institutions, their dismissal of a free press, their denial of minority rights, all of that which is happening in my own country and elsewhere. So I think you just have to be highly alert to this. Do not dismiss it as the kind of musing of cranks, or the very small groups that rant online, or have radio stations that pump up a bunch of nonsense. There is something right now going on in our world, in democratic countries, that is undermining our trust in one another, our foundational understanding of what it takes to run a democracy with all of its flaws. There is no better system, and we should be proud to be part of democracies that make tough decisions. And there is a real sense of, as Joe Biden says all the time, we are in a struggle between democracy and autocracy. And honestly, it comes down to the attraction that strong men, and they're always men, have for certain people for psychological, political, ideological, religious, financial reasons, that they want to line up behind the guy who basically says, I know all the answers, I can solve anything, you just listen to me and don't say anything that I don't agree with. Squash opposition, squash a free press, just give me free rein, you won't have to worry about politics ever again. So there is a mood in our country and elsewhere that's happening. And then there are all these cultural issues that are used to really keep people agitated and off balance, that are used to divert people's attention from the hard issues like, how are we going to defeat Russia in Ukraine? How are we going to deal with, in our case, a looming debt limit crisis? Let's go talk about some cultural issue that can keep people all wrought up.
So I think we really need to listen very carefully to the warning Secretary Clinton has just given us. And it is all too easy to dismiss some of these ideas as outlandish, and not to take them seriously because they're so far out of the mainstream discourse, out of what we believe. So let me just say, for Canadians and Liberals here, when someone says, I want to fire the governor of the Bank of Canada, let's take that seriously. Let's understand what is being said. When someone says, I want to abolish the CBC, et aussi Radio-Canada, qui est tellement important pour tout notre pays, on doit se prendre au sérieux. On doit comprendre que les gens qui disent ça, c'est vraiment leur objectif et ils veulent vraiment, vraiment changer sérieusement notre société. And when someone puts incel tags on their social media, we have to take that seriously. We can't just drive by and not pay attention. It could happen here. But we're not going to let it happen, right? That's why we're all here.
I just want to underscore her warning. I was in the Senate for 8 years. I served with a lot of the people who are still there. I don't recognize them. I don't recognize people who I worked with who are now willing to engage in election denial, who are claiming that there are outlandish conspiracies, that the insurrection at the Capitol on January 6th didn't really happen, even though we saw it with our own eyes. It is shocking to me what has happened to the Republican Party in the United States. They have largely acceded to the most outlandish, untrue kinds of claims. And I never thought that would happen. If you had asked me even 5 years ago, let alone 10 years ago, would so-and-so or so-and-so be supporting a former president who wants to destroy our country's institutions for his own purposes, political and financial, I would not have believed it. So I don't want to be an alarmist, but I think a lot, in the Democratic Party in the United States, I'll speak for us, not for you in the Liberal Party, I think we pride ourselves on being tolerant, and thank goodness we are, but sometimes there are things you should not tolerate.
Okay, we heard it. We heard it from the woman who knows, so let's remember that. And we also heard, I think, a good political strategy, a good Canadian political strategy from Prime Minister Chrétien. I loved his idea of a really big tent now, inviting Stephen Harper to come join the Liberal Party. And that might be a stretch a little too far. But I really think now is the moment to have conversations with our conservative friends, with our conservative neighbors, with, you guys know I'm from Northern Alberta, so I have conservative relatives, quite a few, and really to say to them, here is our vision of Canada. And we think this vision, our Liberal vision, includes you a lot more than what the other guys are saying. Don't you agree? And I think we're going to find, maybe we're not going to go all the way to Stephen Harper, although I think, François-Philippe, we should ask Jean Chrétien to make the call and make the ask. We always believe in making that last call, but I think we're going to win over a lot of people. Now, our time is running out, and I just need to ask a question moving into the personal space for female politicians, and I need some advice. And I'm going to start by promoting the really hilarious and wonderful and page-turning book Secretary Clinton has written with our very own wonderful Canadian Louise Penny. State of Terror. Now, I love this book, and not only because in the first chapter there is a Canadian foreign minister who is not very well dressed. Some of us are not very well dressed that often, wearing a moose and bear pajamas on the Zoom call. I loved that. But what really grabbed me in the opening scene is our heroine, Secretary of State Ellen Adams. She's just been on a trip. Okay, she has her own plane. Canadian politicians don't do this. But she's just been on it. Okay, but still, it's been a long trip. She's been in Korea. She's been in the DMZ. She's like her suit is all muddy. Her hair is a mess. And there's like this command performance with the president, State of the Union. And there's this big debate in her team. Like, should she change and stuff, or does she just show up? Our wonderful heroine shows up. And she gets excoriated. But like, my question to you, Secretary Clinton, is, okay, I'm going to make an admission. You can tell me if you agree. I love my job. I am so grateful to all of you for letting me do my job and serve you. I truly love it. I really do. It is a privilege. But there are two things I hate. Worrying about my hair and worrying about my clothes. The worst thing, it's terrible. I'm very bad at it. And if even once my hair is a mess in a picture, that's going to be the picture in the newspaper and on TV. Like, for years, the worst picture. Is this true, and what do we do about it?
Well, you know it's true. It is absolutely true. In my book, What Happened, I have a chapter on being a woman in politics, and I calculated from the time I began my presidential campaign to the election day, how much time I spent on hair and makeup. And think about this, 25 days. Think about it. And then I thought, you know, all these men, they get in the shower, they get out, they shake their head, and they go get dressed and they're off. And it is absolutely, the double standard is alive and well. You know, one time as Secretary of State, I landed in Bulgaria, and I'd been like, you know, just goggle-eyed all over the world. And we'd been late, and I had a meeting with the then Prime Minister, and so I had, you know, I pulled my hair back in kind of a ponytail. And I get to the Prime Minister's office, and we're sitting across the table, as you do in these so-called bilats, and he is staring at me. And, you know, I'm starting to get a little self-conscious, like, do I have, you know, like, food in my teeth? I mean, what's happening? And I finally said, you know, Mr. Prime Minister, is there something you want to say? And he goes, well, I was told if your hair was pulled back, you were in a bad mood. I said, no, I'm just an inept hair person. But it is, you know, you have to laugh about it, because otherwise you'll cry, because it takes up so much time and energy, and you have to just live with the fact that, you know, I was in India one day, and I got, you know, something in my eye, and I couldn't wear my contacts, so I put on my glasses. Front page stories, what did it mean that Hillary Clinton wore her glasses? It meant I got something in my eye. And, you know, you can't, again, take it seriously, because it's so ridiculous most of the time, but you have to accept the fact that that's the double standard, and it's going to, you know, affect you if you're a woman in politics.
Sadly, this is true. And I apologize for all the terrible pictures. I'll tell you one funny story, very short story in response. There was once some like news story about the color of dress I wore, kind of analyzing what was the sophisticated message being sent. And my sister sent me an email saying, ha, Chrystia, they really don't know you. If they knew you, they would know the color of dress you wear depends entirely on what is the only thing in your closet that is clean. This is true. Our time has come to an end. I know. Well, we could ask the secretary to stay longer, but I think it would not be fair to her. This is her set, yeah. I really, just in conclusion, would like to thank you so much, Madam Secretary. I'd like to thank you for that, yeah. Okay, I want to say the things I'm thanking you for. So let's thank her for that incredibly important and timely warning about defending our democracy. Let's, you know, if we remember one thing from what we heard today, let's remember that. And I do so much, very both personally for myself, but for every woman in this room and for every woman in Canada, want to thank you for, I was gonna say tirelessly, I'm sure you got tired, but for just keeping on going, breaking that trail, the branches are hitting you, you're getting tired, you keep on going. You are such an example. example, such a role model to us. You have done so much.
Thank you so much.
Et de retour sur le YouTube Live, maintenant on est avec notre chef du Parti libéral, le Premier ministre Justin Trudeau. Bienvenue sur le live.
Merci,
Comment
merci.
tu te sens, Premier ministre?
Ah ben, ça me sent... C'est super, tu sais, j'ai même pas les mots, là. L'énergie ici est tellement positive. Les gens s'amusent, c'est le fun d'être rassemblés en tant que libéraux. Ça faisait longtemps, depuis Halifax, il y a 5 ans, toute la pandémie, la convention virtuelle qu'on avait eue, c'est un moment où on peut se rassembler, pas seulement juste pour se voir, mais pour se remémorer de pourquoi on est libéraux, pourquoi on est en train de se battre, parce que réellement, le choix va être extrêmement clair dans les prochaines élections.
Monsieur le Premier ministre, on a beaucoup de jeunes qui sont ici présentement, mais on en veut encore plus. Quel message tu as pour les jeunes qui nous suivent présentement et qui peuvent envoyer à leurs amis pour faire sûr que quand c'est le temps de faire le choix, ils fassent le bon choix?
Bien, souvent, on veut essayer d'attirer des jeunes, des militants parce que, ah oui, il faut que vous vous impliquiez en politique, il faut que vous vous intéressiez au parti. C'est pas ça qui intéresse tout le monde. Les gens sont ici parce qu'ils aiment vraiment la politique et ce qui entoure, puis c'est pas pour tout le monde. Mais on connaît tous des gens qui s'intéressent peut-être pas à la politique, mais qui sont préoccupés par l'environnement, qui sont préoccupés par des causes humanitaires, qui sont impliqués dans leur communauté. Et de les laisser être plus ou moins intéressés par des partis politiques, mais très intéressés par les sujets qui vont être importants dans les années à venir pour notre pays, c'est la façon d'avoir des vraies conversations avec eux. Quelqu'un n'a pas besoin de devenir un militant, un sympathisant libéral pour voter libéral un jour. Là. Et c'est ces conversations réelles et ancrées dans le pourquoi on est en train de bâtir un monde meilleur qui vont se rassembler.
Well, what I'm getting from this weekend is just a ton of energy. And that's what everybody felt yesterday during your speech, was optimism. You know, a real forward-looking, thoughtful, not pessimistic view. And that's what's been resonating today, and that's the sort of vibe that I'm feeling. That's the tone of the weekend. And I think it was great that you set that tone really early yesterday. And one of the things that I took from yesterday was talking about building a nation and talking about continuing to build the nation. And actually, it's my favorite quote from your father, which is, a nation is not like a house that you just build one day and then it's done. A country's never finished, and we're not done our job. And your reach out to workers and the people that use their hands to build our economy up was really, really meaningful. And I was wondering if you could comment a little bit about that message to people who are working hard to build up our country and how we're working for them.
Well, listen, I mean, there's no hiding from the fact that we're in a time of anxiety right now. Like, things are really challenging, whether it's the impacts of climate change that are realer and realer every single day, whether it's the war in Ukraine and the destabilization of geopolitics that comes with it, the disruption of supply chains that continues even years after the pandemic's most acute phase, inflation, all these things that are going on that are putting pressure on people. And there is worry about whether there's a bright future and whether there's room for people to really succeed and see their communities and see their kids succeed. Those are real questions that people are asking. But as political leaders, we have a choice. Either you reflect back that anger and say, yeah, you should be really angry. Let's get angry together and we'll get even more angry. And then we'll shout some and then we'll burn some things down and we'll get, okay. But that's not going to solve anything. Whereas what we've been working on is saying, yeah, we're working hard every day to make things better. Things still need to be worked on. There's still lots to do. But there are solutions for this, and we can start showing with people and bringing them along in the future we're trying to build. Yeah. And that future involves success for every industry right across this country, whether it's energy workers who are incredibly excited about the opportunities in hydrogen, in solar, in renewables, or just in decarbonizing our traditional fossil fuels that is going to be a big piece of the next number of years. Or whether it's natural resources in minerals or manufacturing like Volkswagen or the automakers that are coming in that are doing big things, or whether it's aerospace, or whether it's the innovations coming in through Atlantic Canada, or the innovations we're having around the prairies in farming and in food production for the world. Like, there is so much going on, and the world is looking to Canada right now for everything that we have to offer, whether it's the stability, the reliability, the environmental respect, the labor standards, all those things that people are realizing are precarious in supply chains elsewhere around the world, and that Canada is there for, gives us this moment. But our job as Liberals is to make sure we're painting that picture to people at the same time as we recognize, but yeah, that's a picture tomorrow. Today, we've got a lot of work to do, but we're doing it and we're being there for each other while we get to that brighter future a few years from now.
And you mentioned being there for Canadians, and you also touched on another quote that I know that we share a lot of affinity for from Star Wars, and like what good comes from being angry and wanting to fight, whereas we're promoting that positive message of being very, very optimistic and working hard at the same time. I was talking to some young people earlier today who are working very, very hard, and they're very optimistic for the future, and 3 of them you'd be very proud of signed up for Teachers College. These are young people who I've knocked on doors with in 2 or 3 different ridings. They serve on EDAs, and they were working in government. They went back to Teachers College, and you know why? Because we took away the interest from student loans. That's when they decided that it was feasible for them to go back to school. It wasn't possible before, and they're going, you know what? The government is investing in me. This Liberal Party is investing in me and my future. I'm going to give back.
That's exactly what it's all about. It's understanding that everyone has a capacity and an opportunity to build the country around them. We just, as a government, need to facilitate it. It goes back to my story as a teacher. A good teacher isn't someone who gives out the answers to everyone. A good teacher is someone who empowers the students to figure out their own success, their own strengths, and build that confidence. Well, government should be doing the same thing, creating the conditions for people to succeed, to be optimistic and forward-looking about the world we're building. And that's why glad to see your friends going off to teaching college, but I look forward to them coming back to politics as well.
Avant que vous nous quittez, Monsieur le Premier ministre, il faut parler aussi du Québec. Donc, le Bloc québécois, là, il est là à écouter Poilièvre s'attaquer aux francophones du Québec et hors Québec. Est-ce que vous pouvez parler un message qui est fort pour que quand le Québec va décider de voter, il faut que le Québec fasse le bon choix, sachant qu'ils ont beaucoup à risquer?
Ben, écoutez, les Québécois, ça fait plusieurs élections maintenant qu'ils élisent plus de membres du gouvernement que de membres du Bloc ou d'autres. Donc, les Québécois continuent de démontrer qu'ils veulent faire partie d'une vision positive pour le pays. Alors, j'ai bien hâte de pouvoir continuer de parler de tout ce qu'on est en train de faire sur l'environnement, pour protéger la langue, pour protéger la culture, parce que ce que le Bloc est en train de faire, oui, il parle de protéger le français au Québec, mais il laisse complètement pour compte les francophones hors Québec. Et ça, cette faiblesse-là, ils veulent pas trop en parler, et c'est justement toujours ma réponse que oui, on est là pour protéger le français au Québec, et on le fait en protégeant le français aussi ailleurs au pays. Alors, ces éléments-là, ça finit par aller rejoindre les Québécois, et on va continuer de chercher à rassembler les gens d'un bout à l'autre de ce pays.
Merci énormément de discuter avec nous.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. It's great to have you on Liberal Live.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Ariel. Merci, Al.
Back to Liberal Live with Adam and Ariel. We got our friend Karina here from Burlington. So good to see you. The energy in this place was just electric during that last couple of segments. I just loved the part where the secretary spoke about women's inclusion in the economy and the importance of childcare. She was excited for us that we have a national $10 a day childcare program, and I can't imagine how that must have made you feel as somebody that's worked so hard to make sure that it's been delivered in 13 provinces and territories. What's your reaction to all that?
Oh my goodness. I mean, she said so many things that, Canadians are feeling every single day about the importance of childcare. And obviously I am an enthusiastic supporter and champion of childcare. But one thing that she said that resonated with me so much is if you don't support childcare, you're hobbling not just women's dreams, but you're hobbling the economy. It was just so
Shivers.
profound. Exactly. It's amazing what we've been able to accomplish here in Canada. And for me, it was so clear that we have gained so much. And I think from her perspective, from south of the border, talking about what women are losing right now, literally access to health care. Women's lives are in danger. And she said something that I think we all need to hold on to, which was don't think it can't happen here. And part of her concluding remarks were, if you had told me 5 or 10 years ago about colleagues that support what they support now, I wouldn't have believed you. And so anyways, it was so, as you said, electrifying. There was so much energy, and there's so much for us to be proud of as Liberals that we've been able to deliver. And before Secretary Clinton, we heard from Jean Chrétien, who listed the significant contributions and accomplishments of the Liberal Party of Canada to building this country. I'm energized, I'm enthused, and I'm excited.
You know what I was so taken by is that as a small country, population-wise in our economy compared to the United States, we're leading. Yeah. We're leading. We're showing the way. So, Ariel, I know you got some awesome questions for Karina. I'm so inspired by Canada. We're an example, and it's so exciting.
Yeah. Mais Karina, en tant que jeune femme, moi je retournais sur les messages clés qu'elle a. C'est comme si c'est des avertissements qu'elle a donnés pour le Canada, pour faire sûr que pour avoir un monde qui est inclusif, il y a des choses qu'on doit faire, que nous on a fait, mais il y a des choses qui s'en viennent qu'on ne peut pas prendre pour acquis. Parle un peu de ce message d'avertissement que secrétaire d'État Hillary Clinton a donné aux Canadiens de faire sûr que le populisme ne grandit pas au Canada.
Non, tout à fait, tu as toute la raison. Et ça m'a frappé vraiment fort parce qu'il y a beaucoup de progrès que nous avons fait comme gouvernement, comme parti libéral, comme militant libéral, que nous appuyons les droits des femmes, les droits de la communauté LGBTQ, les avancements en réduction de pauvreté. C'est vraiment incroyable ce que nous avons accompli. Et elle parle d'une place d'expérience, de ce qu'ils sont en train de vivre dans les États-Unis. Les droits que les gens pensaient qui étaient là pour toujours sont en train d'être roulés en arrière. Alors, c'est super important de jamais laisser pour compte que ça ne peut pas arriver ici. Alors, pour moi, le message de la secrétaire Clinton, c'était suivez le chemin que vous faites à ce moment, mais ne jamais penser que les forces peuvent essayer de retourner au passé. Alors pour moi, c'était une motivation de continuer de défendre les droits des femmes, de défendre les droits des communautés LGBTQ, de défendre la diversité, le multiculturalisme, le bilinguisme, de protéger les médias. Elle a parlé beaucoup des forces de la droite, de far right. Et ce que nous écoutons ici de Pierre Poilievre qui veut terminer avec Radio-Canada et tout ça. Alors, c'est super important que nous continuions de défendre les droits des Canadiens.
Il y a aussi Chrystia qui a raconté une histoire d'une jeune libérale qui, au fait, ne se sent pas prête à se représenter parce que l'environnement est vraiment toxique. On le vit ça tous les jours dans le QP. Quel message tu as pour les jeunes libérales qui doivent prendre la relève au lieu de se reculer?
Votre participation est plus importante que jamais. Plus important que jamais. Si vous voulez que nous restons un pays qui est accueillant, qui est inclusif, où les gens, tout le monde, n'importe ce qu'ils croient, n'importe ce qu'ils aiment, n'importe que c'est leur genre, que tout ça, si ça c'est important à vous, on a besoin de vous. On a besoin de votre participation, votre énergie, votre motivation et votre bénévolence. Parce que ça, c'est quelque chose que c'est important à tous nous. Nous faisons cette lutte et on doit le continuer. Mais moi, ça m'a motivée, ça m'a inspirée et on doit continuer de avancer sur ce chemin, de défendre les droits de tous les Canadiens.
Absolument. Adam?
Well, I'm just so inspired. The optimism, the desire to keep this good fight going has been so extraordinary. So I want to thank you for coming up here. It's nice to have my friend from Burlington here. Ariel, it's been so fun working together, and we're back tomorrow at noon with lots of people. I think we're starting with Minister Anita Anand from Oakville, where I grew up. So yeah, it's awesome. We're a great family here. Hope you're enjoying back home, and we'll see you tomorrow.
And we're just adding that we're also chatting with Liz Plank and Farah Alibi. It's going to be exciting. Do not miss it. And if you're still watching with us, continue to hashtag Live2023 and make sure that you donate to our friends so that we can continue to keep this Canada moving forward to 54222 or liberal.ca. Good night, everyone. See you tomorrow.
Good night. See you tomorrow.
Bye.